Hello, the following video is a compilation of all of my Extra Peeps videos. This is a series in which I went over every single piece of additional material and bonus content for the British TV comedy Peep Show. Not just the standard extras from the DVDs, but lots and lots of other things too, some of which are pretty obscure or hard to find. So maybe there's some stuff included here that you didn't even know existed. So sit back, relax, clear your tubes, and hopefully enjoy quite a lot of rambling and discussion of all the additional content that Peep Show has to offer. I like Peep Show. I have seen every episode a countless number of times, and the chances are that if you're watching this, you've likely done the same too. But what if there was more Peep Show content out there that you possibly hadn't seen before? Not in the form of a new series, but simply more from the older ones. In this series, I'm going to be going through all the bonus material and extra content that is available for every series of Peep Show, well, just talking about it, all in chronological order. Bits and pieces from the various physical releases of the show, and the very nice book too. Because why not? It's not like there's anything more productive we could be doing with our time. Series 1 of Peep Show includes, as this DVD states, 6 specifically filmed standalone scenes plus audio commentary over 2 episodes by the writers and principal artists. Those 2 episodes are Warring Factions and Funeral, the first and last episodes of Series 1, and the writers and principal artists are Sam Bain, Jesse Armstrong, David Mitchell and Robert Webb. These 6 specifically filmed standalone scenes actually total just over 20 minutes of footage. That's almost the length of a whole extra episode of the show, and they contain some really fun and interesting things too.
Oh, hi, it's you again.
Mark's video CV, or as he elegantly titles it in the video, Mark Corrigan, a curriculum vitae, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a short video CV that is presumably filmed by Jez, and it's actually really funny. It's shot in this goofy style and has some Muzak style backing track at the beginning and at the end that make the video feel really cheesy, which is obviously what they were going for, and so I'd say it worked out really well.
My career teed off back at Exporn in Shropshire.
Mark tries his best to seem funny, cool and great at business, but obviously he just comes across as an awkward guy trying way too hard to seem like he's anything other than that. I love that the camera often holds on him for just long enough at the end of his takes to see him get slightly uncomfortable, and the camera movement in the trumpet scene is so stupid it's completely hilarious.
But it looks like now's the time to change up a gear.
Given that Mark name drops Johnson, who he says is his close friend,
management guru and close friend Alan Johnson,
this video would have to be at least after the 4th episode of the show, and I'm gonna say it's likely from after the end of episode 6, as by that point Mark has repeatedly embarrassed himself at JLB, so he may be looking to try and find a way out of there. Though I'd hesitate to try and fit the extras from this series into the show's timeline, as this was still early days for the characters here and their backgrounds hadn't been properly established yet.
And I think you'll agree, if my job was a West End show, there'd be plenty of stars on the billboards.
I think this video CV is great. It's really funny and makes Mark seem awkward and like a bit of a weirdo, but in a kind of endearing way. The kind of guy you'd call in for an interview just to see how similar to his video CV persona he actually is in real life. There's some fun lines here that wouldn't really have fit in with the show's normal dialogue, but go well here where Mark can actually talk directly to the camera.
Some people think I think so much outside the box, I don't know where the box is. Trust me, I do.
The awkward wink freeze frame at the end really ends everything nicely. I wonder if anyone actually gave the number on the sheet a call.
That is funny.
Scorpion Patrol, Real Life Behind Enemy Lines is split into 2 parts. Part 1 features Mark with Jeremy and Part 2 is Mark with Sophie. It's framed as Mark is recording things on his new digital camcorder to show his dad, who thought that buying one was a waste of money.
Not getting at you, it's rather good, isn't it?
Mark's dad is apparently in hospital too, for some unknown reason.
Mum said you were getting a bit bored on the ward, so I thought this might entertain you.
Mark gets Jez to pretend to be Soldier X, the supposed author of
Scorpion Patrol, Real Life Behind Enemy Lines,
which is not a real book by the way, but a parody of the books of former soldier turned author Andy McNabb. Jez reads the passage, which is full of ridiculous military jargon and over-the-top murder talk with a healthy side of racism.
Me and Jeff dug a cover scrape and brewed up till the wind dropped and we could set up a proper VBD point and mount a Cannington with a decent field of fire.
And he then just gives up halfway because of how horrible the story is, which is just fantastic. This whole reading and Jez's seeming disbelief at what he's looking at are done so well here.
No way. I'm not pretending to be this horrible man.
And then, in an interesting turn of events, Jez then makes the case that it doesn't matter who wins wars because the outcomes are all pretty much the same anyway. If Germany won World War II, he says it'd just be like living under the American Empire. Just instead of other clothes, we'd be wearing lederhosen. His McDonald's line is also just fantastic.
Instead of going to McDonald's, we'd probably all go down Herr Bratwursts for a Hitler burger.
This is actually a really good interaction between Mark and Jez, and one that could have easily fit into a regular episode of Peep Show. Plus it's also kind of weird seeing a shot like this of both Mark and Jez sat together on the sofa from this specific angle. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a single time we saw them like this in the actual show. Part 2 of this segment is of Mark, now having given up trying to get Jez to read to the camera, getting Sophie to go through the Scorpion Patrol book instead. She looks incredibly uncomfortable doing this too, obviously, as she's made to read the same kind of militaristic nonsense about killing that Jez was.
5 snubnuts and a jungle hopper dumped us 15 clicks inside the towel head perimeter.
There is a strange element to this second part though, as it then transcends into Mark filming himself talking to Sophie, who he claims to be his girlfriend, about all the highbrow and sophisticated things they do together in an obvious attempt to try and impress his dad. There's a bit where Mark moves a bit further away from her while she's reading, presumably far enough away that she can't hear him even though they're only a couple of meters apart, and then he starts talking about how him supposedly having a girlfriend is the answer to the jokes his dad's friend used to make about him.
So, Dad, Sophie, there, my girlfriend.
It's kind of weird, this bit. It sounds like a voiceover done in the same way that an internal thought would be done in the show, yet Mark is speaking as though his dad will be watching this, so I guess it's not a voiceover and he's just talking completely out loud. Some of the things he says are pretty funny. My assumption is that his dad's friends, including the name-dropped Big Jim Durston, joked about Mark being gay, and that being the reason he didn't have a girlfriend, but it comes across as quite unsettling in a way, maybe because of the way that Mark is talking.
Guess this probably puts paid to any of Big Jim Durston's jokes down the pub about me.
His awkward conversation with Sophie at the end is really funny. It reminds me of a scene in Series 2's The Man Show, where they're also sat on a sofa having a conversation, but are clearly not on the same wavelength.
Time can be a great healer.
Yeah, Mark, I'm sorry, I don't...
You ought to be careful wearing tops like that. I am a man after all.
Oh, were they in a submarine?
Olivia looks repulsed in some moments, which just amplifies the awkwardness, and she does it really well. Both parts of this Scorpion Patrol bit are well worth a watch. They are already on YouTube, I think. Sam and Jesse really seem to have a dislike of the works of Andy McNabb and other similar writers, as not only do they dedicate 2 segments in the extras to what is partly just mocking that kind of material, but also in episode 6 of this series, Funeral, they also have a character named Keith read a passage from this fake Scorpion Patrol book at Ray's funeral, which is equally as ridiculous.
As Jono let rip with the stolen Kalashnikov and Squarehead fired off a round of Monkey Puzzler.
In fact, given that at the start of this segment, Mark says he's recording the video for his dad, who's ill in hospital and clearly likes these kind of books, could it originally have been Mark's dad that was supposed to die in Funeral and not Uncle Ray? Maybe they thought that killing off one of our main character's parents before we even got to meet them would be a waste of potential in the future.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Also, something else to note, in the menu for the DVD extras, these segments are titled Scorpion Patrol, and that is also what Mark calls it in the video.
Scorpion Patrol, real life behind enemy lines.
But when this book is brought up in Funeral, Jeremy's Aunt Liz says Scorpio Patrol, not Scorpion.
Scorpio Patrol, real life behind enemy lines.
And you can actually get a good look at the cover of the book in this episode too, and it says Scorpio on there as well. But then when Jez throws the book down on the coffee table in the video with him, we can see that it has an orange front or back cover, but when Keith's reading it, it's black and is clearly a different book. Stop the presses, it's the newest Peep Show mystery. Or maybe they just didn't have the prop on hand and so just used a random book for these extras, and the DVD menu uses Scorpion because David misspoke when reading it in the video. Who knows? Mark might just have a dodgy copy on hand, maybe printed by British London.
No, don't worry about the book. Book's great.
Jeremy recorded a tape to send in to try and get on Big Brother, and this is that tape. Much like how Mark tried his absolute hardest to come across as intelligent and sophisticated in his video CV, this audition tape has Jez trying his best to try and come across as a crazy yet cool, outgoing socialite who'll do anything for a shot of fame, i.e. exactly what the Big Brother producers would be looking for, but what is definitely not an entirely accurate representation of what he's actually like.
I'm quite likely to go apeshit and just really make people question who they are and why they think all the stupid things they do.
We get to see another melon-based antic that he's involved in. I think a melon off would probably be easier to clean up than this smashing, though it's not like he'd be cleaning either of them up. Jez thinks he'd be a hit with students and they'd all call him the Jez Man, like Brian, the gay one, but less gay. However, that leads to an interesting tangent that he goes onto at one point.
I'd probably be up for a 3-way if that developed, possibly even a gay thing, although I'd rather not. But I mean, if that's what you were pushing for, I'm just saying I could probably offer that up. Probably not.
This is a bit strange to hear coming from Jez, as all throughout the show there are references that he makes to having slept with men before.
I've had sex with more men than that, and I basically only sleep with women.
And of course in Series 9 we actually see him in a relationship with a man. He's never been overly shy about hiding the fact that he slept with men, so it's unusual to hear him seemingly against the idea here. I think this is more so the case of that aspect of his character not being worked out yet, rather than him lying in the video though. But who knows, maybe Jez thought that the Big Brother producers would prefer a cool manly man like he presents himself as here.
Totally into hot chicks and Hollyoaks and mountain biking and just all extreme sports.
I don't think you're fooling anyone, Jez. I'm surprised he didn't name drop footballer Darren Anderton, Carmen Electra, or a Ferrari Testarossa fast car.
I don't know why, but I just don't feel I'm really coming over. It's quite difficult to vibe it on your own.
Jeremy's last will and testament is a video that Jez recorded that was to be played after his death.
I have died.
More specifically, after he had died of the fictional Bowden-Georgeson syndrome, which is the thing that his Uncle Ray died from in episode 6, Funeral. So that actually gives us an exact time frame of when this would have been recorded, as by the end of that episode he had already found out that he doesn't actually have the syndrome. Or they found the miracle drug cure maybe. Sorry, Tony.
Jesus, Jeremy. Jesus.
Jez leaves Superhands' musical gear and gives his permission to appear posthumously at Glastonbury, but not at the Reading Festival, Donington, or the Big Chill.
Which I went to one year and it was fucking shit.
But then in the episode Sophie's Parents, Sophie's brother Jamie asks Jeremy whether he'd ever been to the Big Chill and he says no.
Shit. You ever been to the Big Chill?
No.
Wow. Maybe he was just lying to try and get out of the awkward conversation. That'd make sense. Let's go with that. He's made a soundtrack for his funeral. The Sex Pistols, followed by Aphex Twin, followed by Wheatus's Teenage Dirtbag. What a poignant song to end on.
I don't want Mum swapping in some tasteful bullshit by McCartney.
And he wants Big Suze and Tony to cry a lot while they're playing. This is another mention of Suze prior to us actually getting to see her for the first time. There's a couple of these from Series 1 and 2. But also Jez says that they could get along someone named Kerry Jensen.
I reckon Kerry Jensen always had an eye for me.
Could this potentially be the Cancer Kerry that is referenced in Series 1's Warring Factions?
By the way, you know Kerry, Cancer Kerry.
Yeah.
Jez then ends the video with a fantastic poem, though unfortunately its last line is not the same as the first line.
You thought I couldn't play or sing and that I was a shit dancer? Well, I hope you're bloody happy now. I've died from a painful form of cancer.
This video will and testament is really funny. I feel like I'm saying that about all of these bonus videos, but it's true. They're not just some crappy little thing on the side, they've clearly had a lot of thought and effort put into them, and I think it really pays off.
My clothes I'd like to be split amongst various different charities so no one can copy my look.
I think it would have been nice if there was a scene in the actual funeral episode where Mark walks in on Jez filming this video, but Jez refuses to tell him what he was doing. Maybe during the bit where he's crying on the floor going through his CDs. It's interesting to note that Jez doesn't mention Mark in the video though. Superhands gets the musical equipment, but Mark doesn't get anything. Admittedly, Jez doesn't own much outside of his musical gear, as pretty much everything in the flat is Mark's, including the chairs, and I doubt Mark would have wanted any of Jez's crap anyway, but still, not even a mention. He could have at least given him his beloved fuck work, let's fuck poster.
So you can all fuck off.
Did you know that Jez's famous song Outrageous is also known as Celsius 488 and a third? Well, it is, according to the DVD menu. The title Celsius 488 and a third is a parody of Ray Bradbury's novel Fahrenheit 451, or at least that's why I assume it is. Is there another reference for the title that I'm missing? Maybe for the third part? I don't know. The fact that Jez has seemingly actually heard of Fahrenheit 451 is quite surprising.
I'm dangerous, I say.
This is the music video for Outrageous, and it's just as outrageous as you'd expect. Not so subtle political symbolism combined with some radical dance moves and non-stop cuts. This little move here that Jez does is actually quite impressive. Jeremy somehow got Mark to appear in this video, God knows how he managed to do that. Mark in a turban and a fake beard pretending to get sucked off by Jez in a bush mask, Mark humping a tree in a graveyard while holding a giant toy snake, Mark in a Tony Blair mask being walked on a lead like a dog through a graveyard by Jez in a bush mask. What the hell must have been going through Mark's head? Though a question does arise here, being who was filming this video in the parts where both Mark and Jez are on camera? Superhands? A begrudging Sophie in the same vein as in that Scorpion Patrol video? Whoever it was, they got to see some pretty strange shit. I can't really explain this video other than by saying it's the exact kind of video that you'd expect Jeremy to make. As I said before, there are 2 commentary tracks for Series 1 episodes, Warring Factions Episode 1 and Funeral Episode 6. These are really interesting things to listen to. Lots of behind the scenes information, talk about lines or bits of content that were cut, plus they're just funny to listen to because the 4 involved, David Mitchell, Robert Webb, Sam Bain and Jesse Armstrong, all have good chemistry with each other. But these literally are full commentary tracks, and so I can't possibly go through every single minor detail that is pointed out in them, as it's almost 50 minutes of material in total. So instead, here are 3 interesting or noteworthy bits of information that were said in each of the commentary tracks that I picked out.
It's really funny because
From Warring Factions, did you know that Peep Show was originally going to be much more focused on the characters watching TV aspect of the show, hence the intro sequence with them looking into a shop window full of TVs. Jesse Armstrong says it was originally pitched as a Beavis and Butthead style show where David and Rob's characters would be reacting to actual TV shows. Obviously it didn't turn out that way in the end. And by the way, no, this woman is not Lindsay the Australian from Series 5 of the show. People always say that, but it's just not true at all. It's a complete lie. This is actually a real piece of TV that they got cleared to use in the series. This is not an actress that they hired.
I feel better. Much better. Like a weight has been lifted.
Me too.
An actor refused to audition for a role in the show because a relative of theirs had suffered from leukemia, and they weren't comfortable with all the cancer-related material in this episode.
Do you mind keeping the hat on? It's just...
All of the stuff with Paula, Tony's sister, was added into the show at a very late stage, and originally the time was used to have Mark and Jeremy arguing more and being, as the episode began on to be titled, Warring Factions.
You're lucky I don't... You're just very lucky.
There was originally supposed to be another scene before the opening one with Mark watching Sophie getting changed to the car that showed the 2 of them playing softball. Mark got hit in the head with a ball, and if you look closely in the episode, you can actually see in a number of different scenes that he has a red spot on his forehead where he got hit, but it's never actually mentioned in the episode.
Yeah?
Uncle Ray's hospital room was shot in the building that was used for the JLB interiors, but Mark getting his balls checked was shot in a real hospital, and the ambulance at the end of the episode is a real ambulance, but the driving it's doing is all fake. There were crew members outside that were rocking it back and forth and moving lights around to simulate driving. Then lastly, Jesse commented that because The Office was a big thing around the time that Peep Show first aired, they were worried that people would think that this show was in some way copying that one because it has lots of time spent inside of an office. This is one of the reasons why Warring Factions was chosen to be the first episode and not the interview, which has large parts spent inside of the JLB office.
Are you with me?
So yes, there's a lot of interesting little bits of information in these commentary tracks, and if you're the kind of person that likes knowing little behind the scenes aspects of things you enjoy, I'd recommend giving these 2 a listen. I assume they're floating around on YouTube somewhere. Series 1 of Peep Show has a more physical releases than any other. It comes in the standard, plain and rather uniform style that is being re-released and repackaged many times over the years and into a number of different sets, but it also has this rather cool looking release that was exclusive to this series only, as it was the first version to be made. Outside of the UK, there are some other funky copies, like this one from Australia and New Zealand too. I don't have access to any of those Australian DVDs, but given the fact that it has a mention of the 2006 British Comedy Awards on the cover, I'm guessing the actual content of the disc is the same as the later Peep Show releases. The reason I need to note that there may be differences between the various releases of Series 1 though, is that I did find one, and only one. In the DVD menu of the original release, on the episode screen it just says the episode number, while on the later releases it has the actual name of the episode instead. At this point of the show, I don't think the episodes even had names yet. I think they were added after Series 2. There's an insert that contains a scene index and it doesn't have any episode names on there, just episode 1 to 6. It's interesting. This is what the DVD menu looks like, by the way, very Peep Showy. It doesn't have any exclusive content on it, it just loops various clips from the show. However, there is something interesting in one of the sub-menus that was also shown on that index card. Every episode of the show is broken down into 5 chapters, and each one of these own chapters gets its own name, usually something that is said in the episode. The scene with Uncle Ray in episode 6 is part of a chapter named Uncle Ray. Who could have guessed that? They're on the DVD insert too, and they're kind of fun to read. Here's a complete picture of this index card too, just for reference sake. I haven't looked around, just in case there's no good images of it online. Now there is.
Blimey.
Blimey? What's blimey?
Peep Show, The Scripts and More is a book that was released after Series 5 of the show, and it contains the scripts of all the episodes up to that point, plus a few more sections, some pictures, and just some general Peep Showy things. Series 1 section of the book contains 2 segments of note, one of those being an excerpt of the book that Mark has been writing, Business Secrets of the Pharaohs, which got its first big outing in Series 1's Mark Makes a Friend.
Business Secrets of the Pharaohs?
Fun fact, that name is merely the shortened title, the full one being The Business Secrets of the Pharaohs, How the Kings of Ancient Egypt Can Help You Manage Your Team, Your Time and Your Pyramids More Effectively. Catchy. I'm going to have to skip ahead and reference a future series here, but in the episode titled Business Secrets of the Pharaohs from Series 8, you may remember that Mark talks to Simon and some of Dobby's other friends and says that hilariously crappy opening line about how the parallels drawn between ancient Egyptian business and the present day ones are bound to be wrong.
Oh, look who it is.
That speech is taken from this bit that was printed in the book, albeit with a few words changed. That was indeed the opening that he thought would impress his readers. That's some fantastic continuity later down the line there too. I'm not going to read it all out, but I'll put up some pictures of the text on the screen now. To be honest, I'm not even sure if a high quality scan or digital copy of this book even exists online, so if necessary I can go back and provide more images if anyone wants them, because everyone should have the chance to read such brilliance as Mark's list of 8 habits of highly effective pharaohs. Think ahead, 3,000 years ahead.
Oh, I couldn't make the meeting today, boss. I got to fax my soul off to God.
The other interesting thing in this section is that we get these little school report card things, one for Mark and one for Jez, both from when they were in year 4. Mark's is from Fitz Allen School in Whitchurch, Shropshire, and in it says that Mark arrived last year from Exbourne. This exact information was stated in his video CV that I spoke about earlier.
My career teed off back at Exbourne in Shropshire, when I moved due to family circumstance to Fitzallen Comprehensive.
I understand he has even made a friend, Paul Kelper, with whom he plays fantasy roleplay games. This is obviously a character we never heard about in Peep Show, but the initial script for the episode Warring Factions, back when the show was named POV, did name drop a character named Paul. Highlights of this report include a comment from his PE teacher. Mark has had a hard time this year, ever since the unfortunate day he tried to excuse himself from games using the excuse he had overheard from Karen Lipton and claiming it was his period. And chemistry, where he got a D simply because Mark is afraid of chemicals. Lots of fun lines here. Jeremy went to St. Hubert's Church of England School in Leatherhead, Surrey. His report pokes fun at Jeremy's name being Usborne with a U and everything, and not Osborne with an O, something that people definitely confuse sometimes. Jeremy is a sluggish and petulant child.
I might wobble a bit because I'm still a bit pissed from last night, you see.
Also, I am sorry to report that when it comes to playing music, Jeremy may have some sort of medical physical problem which prevents him from keeping time or noticing tonal variations. Then we've got some pictures from one of the early photo shoots for Peep Show. The images from this shoot still get used a lot, even to this day. And that is the end of Series 1's video. Lots of fun and interesting things here, but just a warning, some of the future series don't even come close to this amount of content, so not all of the remaining 8 videos like this are going to be as in-depth as this one was. Anyway, on to Series 2.
The El Dude brothers are back in town.
Now on to Peep Show's second series, the one that brought us a continuation of some existing storylines, the introduction of some brilliant new characters, and some of the episodes that have definitely gone down as fan favourites, like Dance Class, and Jeremy well, hold on, I'll get to that one later. Alongside the 6 episodes that you'd obviously expect, this series includes an 8-minute long behind-the-scenes documentary, a whopping 13 minutes worth of deleted scenes, and the video of Gog's short film for Honda. These pieces of additional material in Series 2 have a similar-ish cumulative runtime to those from Series 1, plus there's some commentary tracks too. How nice.
Yeah, okay, right, ready? 1, 2, 3, let's go!
Deleted scenes are some of my favourite things to comb through from film and TV. It's interesting to see what material was shot but not included in the final cut, and speculating on why certain parts may have been left out. I don't particularly want to get into a discussion about whether the details in these deleted scenes should be considered part of the Peep Show canon or not, because ultimately it doesn't really matter. But personally I'd lean towards no.
Bullshit, Mark.
Also, although these are titled deleted scenes, some of them are actually either extended cuts of scenes that did make it into the episodes, or alternate versions that take the scene in a slightly different direction, both of which are rather interesting prospects in my opinion. There are 11 scenes included here, and I have split them up by episode. Episode 1, Dance Class, has 2 extra scenes. One is an extended version of the
"That's not how happiness works"
bit from the start of the episode. Instead of cutting away to an establishing shot of JLB, the conversation just keeps going.
You saying I'm some sort of emotional cripple who can't express their feelings, and that's why Sophie didn't want to go out with me?
It's a bit on the nose, I think. I get the idea here is for Mark's rant about what he thinks Jez was implying to be him projecting about his relationship with Sophie, and it is kind of funny, but it's one I can definitely understand the reasons for cutting down.
Well, if you're going to say something as horrible as that, at least have the decency to use words.
This is from the very first scene of this entire series, and I think that some could perceive it as being a bit of an exposition dump, like they wanted to get all the viewers on the same page as to Mark's current status with Sophie, but I think it's a bit unnecessary and probably didn't need to be in the episode. A scene that was completely cut from dance class was one with Jeff and Mark at JLB.
Heard you and Soph went to a circle, Jake. Did you have a good time, did you? You know we went for dinner after.
Oh, really?
So I guess this places this scene during the time at JLB after the initial Rainbow Rhythm section, roughly 10.5 minutes into the episode if you want to look for it. In fact, when Mark comes home from work and finds Jez has abused his yogurt privileges, you can see he's wearing the same tie.
Blimey, Jeff, how amazing. Suppose I might as well give up on Sophie and leave her totally to you.
Really?
No, you can fuck off.
I think this deleted interaction between Mark and Jeff is actually really interesting. It adds a new dynamic to the show at this early stage of the second series. Obviously this is from the first episode, and if this scene were to be included, it would be an indication that Mark perhaps isn't going to be such a pushover as a person. Maybe he's going to go toe-to-toe with Jeff in series 2. Though again, like the first one, it's one that I can understand why it was cut. Mark sneaking onto Sophie's emails is kind of pathetic and lame.
Penmania!
Hey Mark, what are you celebrating?
He's pursuing her in the most passive way possible, so him then suddenly clashing heads with Jeff does stick out a bit. They may have felt that this scene pushed the Mark-Jeff rivalry too strongly straight out of the gate, and that it was something that would play out better if it were developed over a longer period of time. I think I definitely agree with that. Though I have to say I do like this scene. It's got a certain edge to it.
No, you can fuck off.
Plus I think Mark's almost deer in the headlights like expression at the end is great, almost like even he's surprised that he stood up for himself. Episode 2 provides another 2 deleted scenes, one for each of the fan favourite one-time appearance characters, Gog and Daryl. The Gog one is fantastic.
Follow me.
In the actual episode, Jeremy and Gog listen to some of Jez's music, then walk over to the kitchen and have their kebab antics, whereas this scene has them get up, but on the way to the kitchen they stop at Gog's giant wall of DVDs.
Now, pick a movie. Any movie, I bet you I've got it.
Il Postino.
Yeah, be serious, something proper.
Notice how in the actual episode it cuts to the POV of one of the guys in Gog's kitchen at the exact point that this alternate scene starts, a clear indication of where it was cut. Also in this cut version, you can hear a member of the crew repeating the
He hates it. He bloody hates it.
He hates it. He bloody hates it.
That's how they act those bits out in person and keep everything in time. I think this does such a good job at characterizing Gog. He presents himself as this rich, arty, creative type with a fancy flat and lots of DVDs, yet even Jez has him beat. It's such a good moment.
Passport to Pimlico.
No. Don't look.
The stereotype that Sam and Jesse were basing this guy off is definitely a lot more apparent with this extra material.
Scarface.
Exactly. Thank you. There you go. You can have that if you want.
Plus it also gives us a further look at his flat, something which has had way too much effort put into it to hardly be shown off. Even in this extra stuff, the giant portrait that he has of himself is not focused on at all. Gog is such a peculiar character. For how liked he is, he barely gets any screen time, and it's nice to get a little bit more of him here. I definitely would have liked for this to have been included in the final episode. It's only like 25-ish seconds of footage. I'm sure they could have managed to fit it in somehow.
No.
The scene with Daryl is another extended one, and by extended, this one is really extended. In the regular episode, Jeremy opens the door to Daryl, says Mark has gone out for a Thai curry, and then closes the door on him. In the deleted version, instead of getting the door closed on him, Daryl actually comes into the flat to wait for Mark, and we get over a minute of Jez not so subtly referencing other cultures in the same vein as the initial Thai curry one.
Yeah, I love reggae. Of course, there's a lot more to black culture than just music, obviously. Did you know it was a black man who invented golf?
It is funny, but in a show with such tight time restraints, I don't think it's really surprised that this one was cut down. This is around the 17-minute mark of the episode, and this episode in particular is just chock full of content. Still to come after this point, we've got the Frankie and Benny's trip, much more core anglais, Jez, Hans and Mark making a trip to Gog's place, and Daryl getting fired. Not much time to spare at all, and so a scene that doesn't really advance the story in any way getting cut does make sense.
Look, I'm sorry if you find it threatening that me and Mark don't believe everything we're told.
Even though I do kind of wish some of it was preserved, especially the final glimpse at Mark who'd been hiding in the bathroom.
This is the future, black men holding white babies, and you better get used to it because it's very lovely.
There's one scene from episode 3, Local Zero, and it's another long one, nearing a minute and a half of footage that's not included in the final episode. It's from the time that Mark and Jez are out on their spying session come picnic, complete with 3 different flavours of crisps.
Oh,
My goodness.
Ever wondered why Jez was wearing those sunglasses in the episode? It's because he was using them to try and disguise himself from Sophie and Jeff while playing crazy golf right next to them.
I fucking love this game, don't you?
Yeah, it's fun.
It's interesting that Sophie introduces Jeff to Jeremy here, as though they'd never met each other before, because they definitely have.
This is Mark's flatmate, Jez.
They were both at the Laser Bowl together in Series 1's On the Pull, even though they technically never had a scene together. But in the episode directly after that, Mark Makes a Friend, there is a scene that literally has Jeff, Sophie and Jez interacting with each other.
Do you think he's gonna mind? I mean, I think it's possible he might mind.
They definitely have met each other before, making this moment kind of strange given that context. Maybe Sophie was just reintroducing them, I don't know. Jez is being instructed by Mark over the phone to try and get Jeff to say incriminating things in front of Sophie.
He doesn't think date rape counts as rape. Subtly, ask him about date rape.
For me, this is another one of those funny but kind of clumsy and awkwardly long scenes, like the one with Daryl. Ones that you can probably understand the reasons for cutting, even though they were pretty funny as standalone clips. Also, at one point in this scene, you can see what looks to me like one of the production crew's lights in the background. I guess they were trying to make this rather grey and overcast day look like it was actually bright and sunny, whether that you'd want to have a picnic or play crazy golf with a K during. I wonder if the fact that this was caught in the frame in any way played into the decision to not include this bit in the final episode. Probably not.
Have a nice rest of your date. Hope it doesn't end in date rape.
Episode 4, University Challenge, does not have any deleted scenes associated with it, which is kind of interesting as it's the only one like this from Series 2. But Episode 5, The Man Show, has 3 of them. The first is an alternate version of the scene with Jeff and Jez in the pub, looking at a pair of high street honeys.
God, this is so butch.
Instead of just going over, the pair go over to the pool table where a couple of guys have skipped the queue and started playing.
They haven't jumped the fucking queue, have they?
Maybe they're not from round here. I'll go and put some more coins down. They probably don't understand what the coins mean.
This bit obviously didn't get completed fully. The audio isn't consistent and the background noises haven't been added in yet, and so I don't know if that plays into this somehow, but I found the scene to be quite odd.
They're Polish. They didn't know about the coins.
Like how the camera holds on Jez for a weirdly long time when he finds out the guys are Polish.
Oh, right. Right. Sorry.
Is Jeff just staring at him? This feels like it should have cut to a shot of the Polish guy to get his reaction, and you can even see Jeff was looking at that guy when the shot cuts away. I imagine these issues can be explained by, as I said, this part not being edited down fully yet. It feels like one of the writers had just wanted to joke about the coin thing, that being placing coins on the pool table to show that you were in line to use it, and so strung out a scene in which they could make that thing happen. I think it's kind of funny, but not overly fitting for this scene.
We do the coins here.
The next scene was one that was cut entirely, and it's actually a pretty unique one. It's Mark and Sophie presenting the giant oversized check for the money they raised by not properly doing their charity bungee jump.
This is Sophie. Sophie jumped as well. Come on, let's get Sophie in the picture too.
Jeff spills the beans to Johnson about Mark bottling it, which pisses Johnson off and makes Mark look like even more of an oddball in front of Sophie. I'd place this scene just before the one with Mark cutting himself in the bedroom. It's the moment that breaks him, as is evident by his ranting at the end, and the interaction between Mark and Jeff is the catalyst that makes Mark pretend to have turned gay, as he sees it's his only way to get to Sophie.
I hope you're pleased, you fucking diabetes lover.
This is an interesting scene. The guy they're presenting the check to is referred to as Rod.
Rod, this is Sophie.
Making him obviously the Rod Stamp from Shapiro Finance that had gone hyperglycemic.
Rod Stamp's gone hyperglycemic again.
Shapiro Finance being named after Tristram Shapiro, the director of Peep Show at this time. This was the only scene with Rod Stamp, and so because it was cut, he's never actually shown in the series. He doesn't have any lines and he doesn't do anything but look around and get ushered away by Johnson, but here you are. Rod Stamp, one of the more obscure characters in the series.
Oh, for God's sake, Mark. Rod, I'm terribly sorry about this.
Mark and Sophie raised £207.36 for Action Against Diabetes, slightly more than David Brent managed to raise for comic relief. I get big office vibes from this scene. Dejected, failed, oversized check presentation with pictures being taken by a photographer. Though the JLB exterior certainly looks a lot nicer than the Wernham Hog car park. Also, shout out to this line from Mark.
Oh, that is outrageous.
That had to have been intentional, surely. Then the last one from the Man Show is another very interesting one that was completely cut. Mark thinks his chance with Sophie is finally gone, so he gives up on her and burns the things he keeps of hers.
Goodbye, Sophie.
Including hair he stole from her comb, but it's fine. It'd only be weird if he glued it to a doll.
I never even considered gluing it to a doll.
He burns the things in a bin on the balcony, and oh my god, it's the only footage we ever get that's shot on the actual balcony from when they were shooting in a real flat, and in broad daylight too. Whenever the balcony was shown in the show, it was always done at night time, presumably because that makes it a lot easier to have it look realistic while filming on a studio set.
I have to recycle everything, but you get to have wicked bonfires.
Mark burning a few small crappy trinkets in a bin while looking completely distraught looks suitably pathetic, and I love how despite Mark wanting him to stick around, Jez just wants to get out of there.
I might cry, but if you don't mind seeing that.
Yeah. I'll probably go then.
The Man Show does go heavy on the Mark going crazy over Sophie angle, but was this scene perhaps a step too far? I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. Then lastly, episode 6, Wedding, also contains 3 deleted scenes. There's one that was completely cut, in which Jez and Nancy talk about their money issues leading up to their fake wedding.
The thing is, money's really tight for me right now. My boss found out about the visa thing. I'm out of a job.
Nancy wants to keep the costs down, but Jez, obviously wanting this marriage to be a lot more real than Nancy does, thinks they really need to spend some money to not attract attention from the government.
Without a properly coordinated cufflink, the guys from the Home Office are going to be onto us like a shot.
This scene is fun, and one that I could definitely see fitting into the episode. While they're talking, Nancy is decorating Jeremy's room with things like this Jesus is Lord heart thing. This would have led in well to her moving stuff around in the living room and doobie-doing.
But I know how you feel about working, Jez. You showed me your poster.
Yeah.
Next up is another extended scene, this time from when Mark is giving his speech. The speech in the final cut of this episode was cut down quite significantly. They removed a segment where Mark rattles on about one of the things on his crudely written napkin notes: graphite tennis rackets.
You may argue that they've forever destroyed tennis as a spectator sport by making the serve an overly mighty weapon, and you'd be right. But look me in the eye and tell me they're not a hell of a lot better than the wooden ones.
This is a textbook Mark moment, and one that I think fits in really well. Removing that tennis racket bit actually had quite an impact on the scene. In the actual episode, you can see Mark holding his notes, but you never get the POV shot on what's actually on them, which means you miss out on the joke of how badly written and rushed they are. They couldn't show what's on the notes in the final episode because they say graphite tennis racket, something which obviously makes no sense with that segment cut out.
Seriously, I would never make that joke.
Then the final deleted scene from series 2 is another alternate one. Well, I assume it'd be replacing the scene with Nancy doobie-doing. Instead of pointlessly moving furniture around, Nancy wants to watch a film.
You want to watch a movie?
Sure, yeah, that would be nice.
Bicentennial Man starring Robin Williams, Patch Adams starring Robin Williams, Jacob the Liar starring Robin Williams, and What Dreams May Come starring, you guessed it, Robin Williams.
I love Robin Williams. You know, he's got a special twinkle, hasn't he?
Mark says he enjoys Robin Williams' moist-eyed camera hogging, which is a line that might get some of your brains whirring, as when Nancy returns in Series 4's gym, she comments that Jez called Robin Williams a moist-eyed camera hogger.
What I like most about him is his moist-eyed camera hogging.
Come off it, Jez. You said he was a moist-eyed camera hogger.
Do you think that Jez also said that line to her at some point, or did they retcon this line to be one that was said by Jez because the joke wouldn't work with Mark saying it? Who knows? Prior to this line in gym, Jez mentions the Robin Williams DVD marathons, and in fact, even in Wedding, Jez mentions to Tony that Nancy forced him to watch a bunch of Robin Williams DVDs.
Last night we had to watch a whole load of Robin Williams movies.
Oh, Robin Williams, that sap. She likes him. That is so sappy.
So the show includes multiple references to an event that was only ever shown in a deleted scene on a DVD, which I find pretty interesting. This whole Robin Williams bit was actually cut for time reasons, which is understandable, but it is a shame as it's a really funny moment, although maybe he was too much of a stupid little gherkin for the show.
He is a bit like a gherkin.
So Gog, the fan favourite, potentially kebab-eating short filmmaker. In the episode Jeremy Makes It, we see Jeremy trying to make music for Gog's first short, which is for Honda. You can see bits and pieces of the video in the episode, but the DVD release of Series 2 includes a 1.5-minute long video of the Honda short, which thankfully does include Jeremy, Hans and Daryl's soundtrack, but for whatever reason doesn't include Nancy's fantastic lyrics. I guess Honda didn't like those.
Oh, God!
For this one, I just want to say that the video is already on YouTube, because much like Jeremy's music video from Series 1, it's hard to really describe this thing. Well, the short is just a weirdly cut and edited video of Peep Show's creator and writer, Jesse Armstrong, running away from something, in what may be a parody of the video for Darude's Sandstorm, but the music is what really pushes this thing over the edge. It cannot be described by mere words. The 8-minute long behind the scenes documentary is something that I really enjoyed. It doesn't just focus on the behind the scenes of the filming of an episode, but rather talks the viewer through the whole process of making Peep Show. It's not fully in depth, but you wouldn't really expect that given the length of the segment.
Cut there, thank you.
Sam and Jesse say the writing process begins 7 or 8 months before filming starts. The rehearsal stage is about 2 weeks long, in which the cast and crew go over the scripts every day and rehearse their lines while making changes to the things that don't really work too well.
Everything's fucked.
Filming lasts 6 or 7 weeks, with Sam and Jesse alternating days that one of them is on set. There are some interesting bits of information shared, like a short mention of the helmet cam that was used to film some moments from the show, and the then director Tristram Shapiro saying that Peep Show is easy to direct because you know exactly where the camera needs to be, while everyone else thinks it's incredibly difficult to work on because of the POV nature of the show.
You know, making comedy isn't much fun.
I think the awful thing is
you can see some examples of that in the documentary, like we get a look at the filming of the scene with Jez and Jeff in the pub, and you can imagine how strange it must be to shoot conversations in this way. There's a decent amount of footage from the shooting of the Rainbow Rhythm sections, which was fun to see. Hey, there's the instructor having a drink in the background. Maybe a human vitamin drink. Also, it was interesting to see the sheer amount of equipment that was required for the filming. I always liked the fact that early Peep Show was shot in an actual flat, but looking at some of the clips shown here, you can definitely tell that it presented quite a lot of issues in terms of space. Mark's bedroom being rammed full of production equipment gives you an idea of how little room they were working with. There must have been so many people in that flat, and of course, because of the way that the show is shot, in that you can often see an entire 360-degree view of the room and the characters that are in it, they must have had to really squeeze themselves into some tight spaces to make sure all the crew and their gear was out of sight. The logistics of filming in a real flat undoubtedly make the creation of this unorthodox TV show even more difficult. But yeah, some fun behind the scenes clips, a little bit of insight into the workings of the show. This documentary is pretty entertaining, but it's something I can't really discuss too much.
You alright, Mark?
Yes. No, I don't know.
The commentary tracks were some of my favourite extras from Peep Show's first series, and Series 2 doesn't disappoint in that department either. There are 3 included here. One for Episode 1, Dance Class, and one for Episode 6, Wedding, feature Sam Bain, Jesse Armstrong, David Mitchell and Robert Webb like the previous ones, but there's also a commentary for Episode 4, University Challenge, that's done by producer Phil Clark and director Tristram Shapiro by themselves, with no Bain and Armstrong or Mitchell and Webb. Like the last series, I'll pick 3 interesting bits of information out of each of the commentaries to share, starting with Episode 1, Dance Class.
Cool.
The decision to change the title theme from Pip Pop Plot by Daniel Pemberton to Flagpole Sitter by American rock band Harvey Danger was something that was pushed onto the show at the last minute by then Channel 4 comedy executive Ian Morris, who wanted the intro theme to be jazzed up. However, there were originally plans to have a rock music title theme in Series 1 to begin with. Flagpole Sitter was one of the original options, as were tracks by the Pixies and the Libertines. No specific songs are named for those two bands though, so it's anyone's guess what was used from them.
An explanation. Finally. Thank you, Nancy. Thanks for the explanation.
Though none of it is ever properly revealed in the show, Sam and Jesse had a backstory thought out for Tony and Tony's relationship. Tony, the woman, was originally married to someone else and had an affair with Tony, the man, and because they couldn't get married due to their relationship being a secret affair, Tony actually changed her name to be Tony as a sign to show how much she loved Tony. Yeah, it's weird. In fact, Jesse was the only one who actually remembered this, with David instead saying that he thought the joke was that Tony was so full of herself that she could only be in a relationship with someone that shared the same name as her.
Really?
David Mitchell really did get his penis out in the scene at the lake. No trickery here, he genuinely did it, but because of the difficulties in filming this undressing in the POV style, they gave David a ladder to lean on while he was filming it, and if you look closely you can actually see the leg of the ladder in the shot. Director Tristram Shapiro said that he rates this episode slightly lower than all of the others from the series because it was more difficult to film than the others and it contains a technical issue, or at least what he considers to be a technical issue. At this stage, Peep Show was mainly shot with 2 types of camera, the Digibeta camera and the head cam, which results in a noticeably lower quality image. When they were filming Mark and Jez on the bus going down to Darty, they couldn't fit the Digibeta camera into where Jeremy was sitting, and so every shot of Mark had to be shot on the head cam, which Tristram says he was never happy with. I can definitely see what he means, in that the prolonged use of the head cam is pretty noticeable, and it does make it quite jarring when cutting back to the higher quality footage, but it doesn't really bother me at all, certainly not as much as it bothers him.
Well, obviously, fine.
Even though Mr. Rashid's shop that Mark and Jeremy get locked in during this episode looks quite authentic, it's actually not the back room of a shop at all, but it's actually a garage for a car. This window and the entire wall that it's on were just put in by the art department. This is actually a roller garage door, hence the quite quite bulky and awkward looking thing jutting out at the top that's there to cover up the roller mechanism.
Hello?
Hello.
The shoe shop that April works in at the start of the episode was an actual Aldo shoe shop. The filming of the scenes in it overran, and in an attempt to get more time, the production crew offered to buy shoes from the shop if they could continue. The owner of the shop obviously rejected this, as he just wanted money, but then he also said he sold £10,000 worth of shoes an hour, which sounds like complete bullshit to me, but I guess I don't understand the numbers in the shoe world.
Keep feeling my foot, please.
Jeremy's stag party at the pub was originally longer, and it included a segment that was completely cut out. A stripper was hired for Jeremy, but when she turned up, she was, as David says,
thin in a bad way, and maybe a slightly eating disordery, drug addicty way, rather than in a sexy magazine way.
They say that this worked out better on paper, but acted out it felt a bit nasty and unnecessary.
Yeah, well sure, if that's the way you feel.
The character of Sam the Buddhist friend and the things that happen to him in the episode are based on a number of anecdotes from and references to people behind the show. Ian Morris had a Muslim friend who didn't drink and who got injured and ended up in A&E on a stag night. This character was then made into a Buddhist named Sam as a reference to writer Sam Bain, who is also a Buddhist named Sam.
What's his name again?
The moment in which Tony sticks her hand down Jeremy's trousers surprised Robert Webb when he initially saw it, because that is not him in the shot. This was filmed and added in later, something which he didn't know about. That's not Elizabeth Marmer, the woman who played Tony, doing the fondling in the shot either. It's two unnamed other people who filled in for this one specific shot. Robert Sis's girlfriend was taken by surprise when this bit came on.
What?
This is what the cover for Series 2 of Peep Show looks like. No unique looking cover like Series 1 originally had, just this plain style one that matches with every other series after this. However, annoyingly, the actual disc has a design that is different to all the other ones. That's Series 1 on the left and 3 on the right. How strange. The DVD menu has been revamped in Series 1, though it has the same idea of showing clips from the show in the I logo, and there's still episode chapters, but now only 4 of them rather than 5. An interesting thing though, is that if you navigate to episode 2 in the menu, that being Jeremy Makes It, you'll see that it's actually not called Jeremy Makes It, but The Commission. All the other names are what we know them as today, but this one is different. Everywhere online you'll see it listed as Jeremy Makes It, but even in the most recent physical Peep Show release, the Series 1 to 9 box set, which was obviously made well after the episode's name was fully established as Jeremy Makes It, it's still called The Commission even on there. Given that that title is actually said in the episode,
It's Gog! I got the commission!
And that I said in the Series 1 video that I don't think the episodes were actually given proper names until the end of Series 2. The name may have just been chosen on a whim to give the episode a name, and then someone wanted to go back and change it as they didn't like The Commission. I guess that's an interesting little bit of trivia about one of the fan favourite episodes though. Jeremy Makes It wasn't originally Jeremy Makes It.
Well, the whole point of a contract is to make sure this kind of thing never happens.
Series 2 segment from the Peep Show book is odd. There's a few nice pictures of the cast from promotional images, but then there's this. A collection of suggestions, ideas, concepts, patentable inventions, thoughts, feelings, books, poems, sea shanties, dreams, etc. from Mark Corrigan's notebooks. It's a weird mix of some random marquee things, some based on lines from the show and some completely new to the book. Everyone remembers Mark's toast habits with his 1 brown slice and 1 white slice.
Of course, I'm the one who's laughing because I actually love brown toast.
This is then turned into Mark experimenting with different toast combinations. 3 brown is fibrous but palatable, 2 brown, 2 white, 1 brown, 1 white is called the Toastival. One day he even tried 7 white slices. Fucking hell, Mark. Next thing you know, he'll be chain eating toasts. This is a pretty funny segment and it's complete with colour boxes to indicate the toast slices. There's also a callback to episode 1's Mark Makes a Friend, as at the start of the segment, Mark claims he will be trying one universal topping for all of his toast experiments, Rose's lime marmalade, something that Jez brought up when confronting Johnson.
He likes 1 brown with Marmite and 1 white with lime marmalade.
Then Mark laments the lack of new, truly fresh sea shanties that are being written. Why? I don't know, but he does. He then writes his own, which someone more talented than I could probably make work. It's titled Down Below, and he wants it to be sung by a hearty crew of lusty sailors. There's a bit titled Dream, in which Mark recalls a dream he recently had, and one named Business Ideas, where 100% of his ideas are based around the gay and lesbian sector. Idea for a name of a publishing house specializing in gay and lesbian fiction, Pink Ink. He also provides 3 Pink Ink text logo examples. And that is the end of Series 2's bonus material. Some quality stuff so far, and the upcoming Series 3 certainly doesn't disappoint on that front either.
What about all the other stuff?
Other stuff?
Series 3 of Peep Show is one of the best in terms of additional material. 3 commentary tracks, 3 specifically filmed video segments with a fairly substantial runtime, just under 20 minutes of deleted scenes, and interestingly, a commentary track full of deleted scenes, which is quite an unusual thing to include. Yeah, a nice lot of content for this series. In episode 1 of series 3, Mugging, Mark gets mugged in an underpass. He gets his phone and wallet stolen, leading to the epic showdown at Chicken Corner and the adoption of Mr. Cutty Knife. A feature on the DVD titled Mark and Jez's Phone Messages expands on this situation, as we get some mugger POV footage, both from that of the original mugger and from the main guy that Mark met at Chicken Corner, as they receive a number of messages from Mark and Jez who are attempting to get Mark's stuff back.
Because I'm your worst nightmare, boys. A white man with access to an air pistol who just doesn't care anymore.
The muggers never say anything themselves in these parts, they remain awkwardly silent. If I had to guess, it's probably because the original actors weren't playing the characters here, and that probably also explains why there's no other characters physically in the scene, so you never get the reverse shots. But yeah, this is Mugger HQ. This one sits atop an England flag, staring at a blank wall and a table with some empty cans and bottles on it. Shoes on the sofa though, really. He drinks from cans, he eats crisps, he smokes, and oh look, a box of fried chicken on the floor. How fitting.
Can I have my BlackBerry back, please?
As unusual as it is to get footage like this, stuff with a sole character that isn't Mark or Jeremy, it's really the messages that are the main draw here. The rest is just a quick, easy, and presumably inexpensive setup to get to those messages, and that's completely fine by me. It's still kinda cool to get a short look into the world of a very different type of character.
You're obviously a bit stupid. I'm sorry, that's not normally the kind of thing I'd say, but you mugged me, so tough.
There are 2 voice messages, one in which Mark essentially just insults the mugger by saying that although he has his phone and wallet, Mark has a job, a girlfriend and a flat, so he is technically a winner in this situation.
I've got a brilliant job and a massive flat and a gorgeous girlfriend, and you probably can't even get a foot on the property ladder.
Then Jez leaves a message in which he tries, and definitely fails, to intimidate the mugger. He brings up the various connections he supposedly has, including to the Yardies, but I don't imagine they'll solve all his problems.
The Albanians, the Triads, the Yardies, the Gangmasters, the Bull Queens. I've got them all on speed dial. Those are the parties I go to. Mad parties.
These 2 bits are kind of fun for what they are, some little extra lines to give a bit more attention to the mugging plot, but it's really the latter 2 messages that have the best moments in them, because not only do they feature both Mark and Jeremy together, but they're also video messages rather than just voice ones, meaning we get to see them interacting with each other while Mark presumably stands, arm awkwardly elongated, holding a camera phone.
It's a jungle out there, you know, the weak eat the strong. I operate in that way too, in a sales environment. Look.
The video message in which Mark tries to bargain for his stuff back by offering mentoring instead of money is just completely hilarious. So off base and so out of touch, but that's one of the reasons that Mark can constantly be so funny to listen to.
And we could go to the British Museum and have picnics.
And the admission, which is somewhat forced from Jeremy, that they'd still be allowed to mug him a bit, just as long as it doesn't happen too much. A perfect example of Mark's resignation to, and acceptance of, the fact that his life is always going to be a bit shit.
Maybe you'd mug him a bit, like in the early stages.
Sure, yeah, I'm not expecting miracles.
Just great Mark dialogue, and this is stuff that definitely would have worked well in the show during a conversation with the mugger. Jeremy is terrible backup to Mark too, just like he was at Chicken Corner, but some of his facial expressions in the background do such a good job at conveying just how hopeless Mark's spiel is. I also love the fact that Jez considers himself to be on the same level as the muggers, while being incredibly condescending to them, in part because of his tenuous connection to music.
You know, certain people in the music business, and I'm not talking about Bono or Sting, but some of us are really trying to make things better for you people.
I think material like this is the perfect thing to include as a DVD extra, because while the lines are really good, I don't think the presentation of these videos would have fit into an episode at all, especially not the POV footage of the mugger, but they're really nice to have as additional world building for the show. A sort of what if moment when we get to look at the direction the episode may have gone in if it focused more strictly on the actual mugging subplot rather than the repercussions of it. We never hear any more about these group of muggers after the episode ends, and so devoting a bunch of time to showing how clearly intimidated Mark is by them, and that he at least pretends to want to reform them, would have felt a bit pointless and underwhelming if it were included in the actual episode. But as an extra, yeah, this stuff is good. Thumbs up from me. It kind of makes me wish that we had similar bits that expanded upon other one-time appearance characters from the show.
Call me, please.
Carrying on the trend of strange videos delivered via a piece of technology that are fun to watch but wouldn't have fit in with the style of an actual episode, we have one here that is shot entirely from the POV of someone watching Alan Johnson deliver the news of his JLB branch's leads to sales conversion rate figures.
You guys all speak English and I don't speak German, so it's a no-brainer. I win. I get to speak English.
The people watching are all German, and they're the people that Mark and Johnson were obviously supposed to be presenting to on their cancelled trip to Frankfurt from the episode Shrooming, the events of that episode being mentioned multiple times here. Mark's human weakness has resulted in him writing a letter of apology.
I wish to apologize in the strongest possible terms for allowing my body to become infected with a virus. And I hereby agree that if I ever become ill again, I shall resign my position henceforth.
I can somewhat see Mark saying that to just appease Johnson, though part of me wonders whether Johnson forced him into writing that letter. Or maybe he didn't agree to that at all, and Johnson just made it up to try and sound like a tough boss to the JLB board. I'd believe any of those scenarios given the strange relationship between the two of them at this point in the show. Whilst Mark was originally supposed to be going to Frankfurt to queue up Tom Finnemore's laptop, as mentioned at the start of Shrooming,
Found out when I got in this morning I'm just going to be queuing up his laptop.
it seems a new character has taken up that role for Johnson's presentation here. Johnson is being assisted by none other than the little lovable elephant man himself, Gerard, who doesn't seem to be doing a very good job.
Fucking tell me, Gerard. Gerard, you were so fucking redundant. I'm gonna fire your ass and then rehire you on a daily contract so I can fire you again every day for the rest of your miserable fucking life.
Now this is kind of interesting, as Gerard was first properly introduced in Series 4's Conference, yet this extra pertains to an episode from Series 3, making it, chronologically, the first mention of him. He's not shown at all, we never hear him talking back to Alan, and in universe that all totally makes sense, as there's no way he'd walk into view or talk back to Johnson or anything. But this situation presents some questions as to what the behind the scenes timeline looks like for the creation of Gerard. Was the character of Gerard thought out this far back, but only finally included in an episode a whole series later? Was this extra created with the knowledge of the events of Conference? The Peep Show extras are a bit weird, as the filming of them doesn't seem to line up with when you'd expect them to be filmed.
Well, why not?
For example, Series 1's extras are stated to have been directed by Tristram Shapiro on the back of the DVD box. Tristram only actually started directing Peep Show in Series 2, replacing original director Jeremy Wooding, thus indicating that the Series 1 extras were actually filmed during the production cycle of Series 2. The main episodes of Series 3 were also directed by Tristram Shapiro, but the DVD director this time is stated to be James Serafinowicz, the brother of Peter Serafinowicz. James is not credited anywhere else on Peep Show outside of directing these extras for Series 3, as from Series 4 onwards, the main show is directed by Becky Martin. So what's going on here? In one of the commentary tracks for Series 3, which I'll of course get to later, Sam and Jesse say they're currently in the process of writing Series 4, and Series 3's DVD was released in November of 2006, roughly 5 months before Series 4 started airing. In the behind the scenes documentary from Series 2, they stated that the initial mapping out of episodes happened 6 or 7 months prior to the filming of a series, so it's definitely possible there was an overlap here. My guess is that these extras were made after the production of Series 3 and during or slightly before the pre-production of Series 4. This would explain how they can include references to characters that didn't exist in the show at this point, why none of the muggers or Gerard show up physically in the footage, and why the director is a different person to both Series 3 and 4.
Okay? Good? We got it up? It's great.
It's an odd way of doing things. I would have thought that shooting everything Series 3 related at the same time would have made the process a whole lot more efficient than returning back to the extras after the fact, when you don't have the actors or original director on hand. Though that is a bit of guesswork with the production timeline, maybe I'm wrong about it, and feel free to offer up any other theories surrounding this point. But yeah, a bit of a tangent there. Time to get back to the Johnson video. Who were?
And let's just say, wow, whoa.
Seeing Patterson Joseph basically monologuing for 3.5 minutes is so fun. Johnson is probably my favourite supporting character in the show. The way he's written, the way he's performed, the way other characters react to him is always also great. And so more of him, especially in a slightly different context to normal, is never going to fail to disappoint. He often pushes other people into the firing line when facing tough situations, but here he obviously can't do that. And so it's nice to see him squirm a bit and look a bit hopeless, especially at the end when he thinks he's finished the call.
I'm still on, aren't I?
Again, it kind of reinforces the idea from these first 2 extra bits that they're presenting Peep Show material but in a slightly unorthodox way, and I like how different these 2 bits feel. Maybe this is partially down to the fact that these bits were, as I said earlier, directed by someone who never directed anything else Peep Show related before or after this. And you know, I'm not even going to bother pointing out how stupid the fake computer screen looks. Shit.
The best is yet to come, my friends. The best is yet to come. Thank you.
In the episode Quantocking, Mark and Jeremy end up lost on the Quantox while looking for Sophie, who, as it turns out, was already back at the hotel. The part with Mark and Jeremy wandering around outside is one of the best parts of the episode, and it gets a substantial amount of time dedicated to it. However, the bit ends when Mark and Jez split up and go their separate ways when trying to get home. One of the series 3 extras is 8.5 minutes of footage of Mark and Jez's attempts to find their way back to the hotel while alone, which is really cool. The actual video footage is for the most part pretty predictable. Nighttime footage of fields and trees, well, what else is it really going to be? But we can hear Mark and Jeremy's internal thoughts throughout the entire duration, which lets us into some funny moments, plus some that expand upon other events in the episode. For example, Jeremy's drug frisbee is set up here.
I'll just tape a bag of drugs to the frisbee and throw it out of the French windows.
One of the more interesting things shown is that while Jez is pottering along, he comes across the carcass of a huge dead rabbit. And as he was just thinking about how hungry he is because he has the munchies, he thinks about possibly eating the dead rabbit. He even mentions cooking it for a bit.
God, that is a massive rabbit. Maybe I should eat it. I could toast it with my lighter for a bit, part by part.
Obviously, huge parallels to the incident with Mummy from Series 4, in which Jez has a dead animal carcass and for whatever reason considers eating it. Could this be a coincidence? Sure, that's definitely possible. But given that I spoke about how the filming of Series 3's bonus features may have overlapped with the creation of Series 4, I think it's definitely a possibility that this moment was created with the knowledge that Jez would have his encounter with the dog in Series 4's holiday.
It doesn't look very much
It's turkey.
like...
It's turkey leg.
I have no proof of this, of course, but this seems like such a specific concept to use twice in a short succession to be a coincidence. Or maybe this bit in some way inspired the creation of Jez eating Mummy in Series 4. Like maybe Sam and Jesse really liked the idea of Jez messing around with a dead animal and thought the idea deserved more attention than it just being on a random bonus feature on a DVD. Again, I don't know, but it's food for thought. Yum.
Godspeed, you, oh giant rabbit.
At one point, Mark fails to make a fire, and while doing this, he has a line about a kid from his scouts group telling him the wrong way to masturbate.
Even James Dodd taught me the wrong way to masturbate.
This is pretty much exactly the same joke that is made in a Series 4 episode, Handyman, where Foz, the guy he went to school with, also taught him the wrong way to masturbate.
You got taught the wrong way to rub one out, and you tried it for 2 hours.
Yet another similarity between these extras and material from the then upcoming Series 4. Aside from that stuff, there's a moment where Mark genuinely sounds pretty scared and starts talking to God and singing Kumbaya, which I liked. I think moments of weakness often bring out the best in comedy characters, both in terms of laughs and also development of a story, so I thought this moment was really fun.
I just want to make it clear, God, I'm not pleading for your aid since patently you don't exist. It would be pretty bloody brutal of you to let me die just because as yet I haven't seen empirical proof of your existence.
It's just nice to get some extra thoughts from inside Mark's head at this specific time, because the events of Quantocking are undoubtedly some of the most important in the show's history. Like the other extras from this series, there's no reverse shot to get a look at our characters, but I really wish there was for this bit. I'd have loved to have seen more of dishevelled wilderness survivor Mark.
Hello. Hello, Jez.
Mark ends up clearing a patch of dirt on the ground, lying down and presumably trying to sleep. Just out there in the middle of the woods, not in a disused barn like he says in the actual episode, though we probably just went to the barn a bit later, as I doubt Mark Corrigan of all people is going to be able to sleep here. He does give quite a somber, if melodramatic closing speech. Well, not speech, but you know what I mean.
Why does everything have to end dead, frozen, outside Moscow?
There's about 20 minutes worth of deleted, extended, or alternate scenes for Series 3, which is great to see, but there's also a commentary track done by director Tristram Shapiro and series producer Phil Clark, which gives a bit of further insight into why certain decisions were made with various different scenes. It's a pretty interesting and enlightening thing to include, and one that I definitely appreciate as it means there's a whole lot less speculation necessary on my end as to why certain bits may have been left out of the full episodes.
Oh yeah.
There's a single scene from episode 1, Mugging, one that I believe I've actually spoken about in a video before. It's an alternate come extended version of the very first scene in the episode, the one in which this brand new character, Michelle, is introduced.
What are you afraid of?
You.
Nothing.
Her and Jez were in a relationship from some point after the end of Series 2 until the end of this episode, as she's never seen or mentioned again after this. Not only does this scene continue after Michelle agrees to the threesome, with her asking Jeremy to eat her out right there on the kitchen counter, which Tristram says on the commentary track was a controversial moment during the production that some people found indecent. But it also has a few slight changes that show that the episode was slightly different originally. Take Jeremy's very first internal thought, for example, while he's plunging.
Okay, Jez, come on. This is it. Be a man. Finish the relationship. Okay, Jez, the love of your life's coming back today. Finish this shitty relationship.
It initially didn't have the comment about Zeus coming back into his life, which is obviously a major part of the episode, and so it makes sense being the thing on Jeremy's mind in the opening. The deleted scene instead has the reason that Jez wants to leave the relationship with Michelle to be the fact that she may just be a bit horrible, kicking him out of the flat and stuff.
You wake me up at 2 in the morning and tell me to get my clothes on and fuck off back where I came from.
Two different means to the same end, I suppose, with the goal from this scene to be introducing Michelle and establishing that she wants to try and save the relationship that he wants to get out of by them acting out their sexual fantasies. Phil Clark said the reason for cutting down on some of the Michelle stuff was that he felt at the start of the episode wasn't timed very well, and they didn't think that there was enough time spent with Mark getting mugged, going home and meeting Jeremy, so more time had to be made, in part by chopping down this Michelle scene.
You not eating me is not going to help save this relationship. You've got to be more realistic.
I don't really think this stuff matters though. The stuff that was cut isn't that funny, and I'd say that I definitely prefer more time to be spent with a post-mugging Mark than Michelle, who is a fairly nothingy character, one that only exists to fill a hole left by both Nancy and Tony. More on that later when I get to the full episode commentary track for mugging.
Great, okay.
Sectioning, the second episode of Series 3, doesn't include any deleted scenes, but thankfully it's the only episode like this from Series 3, with all the other ones having more content. The episode after that, Shrooming, in fact has 3 scenes included. The first one is not actually a deleted scene. It's a bit confusing. It's the entire scene in which Jez turns up at the cafe Zeus is working at. The only difference between this apparently deleted scene and the scene in the actual episode is that the bit where Jez says, "Oh Zeus," is cut a tiny bit differently.
Sounds a bit scary.
Oh, Suze, they're not scary.
Sounds a bit scary.
Oh, Suze, it's not scary.
There's nothing stated in the deleted scene commentary track about this scene in particular either, so yeah, it's a bit unusual as to why it's included. The thing is that the next scene included after this one actually is a proper deleted scene, from the very same moment as the previous one, with Jez going to the cafe to meet Suze. This time when he turns up, he brings up issues that Suze is supposedly having with her hunk of monk, Stu.
I was just concerned about the whole Stu situation.
Right. I think we're splitting up. I have had some big cries.
Was there originally supposed to be more of Stu and Suze in the episodes before this one? You could only assume so, as there's no indication that there's any issues between them in mugging, yet here it seems like this is something that's well known to Jez.
I was just really hoping that things hadn't gone from bad to worse and really blown up in your face or anything.
Again, the commentary track offers no background here, instead simply stating that by cutting this scene we lose mention of Suze breaking up with Stu. I guess this scene would kind of explain the leap from Suze having a boyfriend in mugging to her and Jez then being on a somewhat of a date in Shrooming, if you can call this weird situation a date. But yeah, there were perhaps more mentions of lovely Stu that just never saw the light of day. Serves you right for drinking milk straight out of a bottle in a stranger's house, you fucking weirdo.
How'd you like that, Stu, you monk?
Then the final deleted scene from Shrooming is one that Phil and Tristram say they both love, one they refer to as the ready, steady, cook moment.
I'm no Ainsley Harriott.
In the actual episode of Shrooming, Jez gives Mark some lunch, being 3 different flavours of crisps all mixed up. Gourmet stuff.
What will come first, scurvy or rickets?
But here, Mark instead tries to trick Jez into making him something that he actually wants, steak, chips and peas, by giving him the exact ingredients to make that meal as part of his ready, steady, cook ingredient selection.
I mean, with steak I could make steak, potatoes, I could fry them with the oil, chips, steak with chips, and peas.
Brilliant.
Mark says Jez loves watching Ready Steady Cook here, which Jez corroborates.
You know how you love Ready Steady Cook?
Yeah.
Then in fact, him watching Ready Steady Cook has already been mentioned in the show before, in Series 2's The Man Show.
Isn't Ready Steady Cook on?
Just finished.
This moment is really great, and I love how childish and gullible Jez comes across and how patronising Mark is.
We make dinner into Ready Steady Cook.
How? Peas.
Brilliant.
Great.
It's a great reflection of their relationship at this time. It's a nice little self-contained joke, one that could really fit in anywhere in the show, and that would eventually be its reason for being cut out, as in the commentary track they state that the fact that this scene is self-contained meant that it could be easily cut out of the episode to make room for other stuff, which unfortunately it was. Then, there is the second part to this Ready Steady Cook moment, that when Jez finally brings in the dinner to Mark, it turns out Jez realised that Mark was manipulating him into making him a meal, so he intentionally fucked it up. Typical Jez.
It wasn't Ready Steady Cook at all, was it? It was Ready Steady Steak and Chips for Mark.
Steak, chips and peas instead becomes a fucking monstrosity.
I've stuffed the steak with grated potato, and I've grilled the peas in oil. Enjoy.
The deleted scene from episode 4, Sistering, may just be one of the best ones from the entire show in my opinion. It's a fantastic moment with Mark's sister Sarah that really expands upon the way that the siblings' relationship works, or rather doesn't work in some ways. Plus we hear more of Sarah's thoughts on Jeremy, and it's hilarious just how well he has managed to present himself to her.
He's funny.
No, he's not.
He's sweet.
He's not sweet.
He's clever.
Honestly, he's really not clever.
Sarah's relationship with Simon is also expanded upon.
Young when I married Simon. Maybe I even subconsciously, I don't know, looking for a dad substitute, and boy oh boy did I get one.
Mark's reaction to this is a complete reflection of him as a person. Fingers in ears, pretending to ignore everything he doesn't like in the hopes that it all goes away. Such a brilliant, hilarious moment that I think would have added a lot to this episode if it were included, and it really demonstrates Mark's approach to issues he faces.
I love Jeremy, but the guy's probably going to die in a ditch. He's hobo material.
I really like Sarah and the way that she manages to make Mark incredibly uncomfortable with almost everything she says and does. She's one of the most underrated characters in the show in my opinion. Plus, I'll also say that I actually think the actress that plays her, Eliza Bennett, does a really great job, and that's especially apparent in this deleted scene.
Well, it's boring talking about how fucked up things were when we were growing up, about mum and...
Yes, it's boring. I'm bored.
I don't quite know how to put it into words, but Sarah just feels like the exact kind of person that Mark would try and avoid. And that's why she's so good, because he simply can't avoid her. Yeah, I really like this scene, and if it were to be included in the episode, I think it would have been one of the standout scenes with her in it, and one of the best of the episode.
She used to meet Mike Wilson after their pottery class and...
La 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 la! I'm not listening. I don't want to know.
One scene is included from episode 5, jurying, but on the commentary chat the guys say that it kind of plays into an aspect of the episode that was present in earlier iterations that was eventually toned down, in that Mark was originally going to get really invested in the case that Jez is a part of, in that he'd be going through bits of paper that Jez would bring home and be really engaged in trying to solve the crime. That idea really only survives in a few parts of the episode where Mark tries to get Jez to tell him about the case, like when the two are in the shop, or when Mark asks him about the security footage from Ryman's.
First day in court, tell me everything.
They haven't found the missing security tapes from Ryman's.
The scene is a slightly extended version of the one in which Jez tells Mark that the trial is going to be about a kid stealing a bun.
I'm not going to send a man to the gallows on the strength of something he might have done, Mark. I think that might be a little bit unjust, don't you?
That's a fun line, and there's not much more to this bit than that. Oh, other than that Jez looks utterly gormless staring at a cartoon. Then the last 3 deleted scenes I'm just going to combine into one talking point, as they're all just extra material from the time that Jez and Mark are lost outside in quantocking. Those 3 bits total 11 minutes of footage, but much of that is just stuff that was included in the final episode anyway. It's not 11 minutes of pure unseen material.
Look, if you're not going to call Mountain Rescue, then at least let me order a pizza. I'm starving.
Not much of it is really new jokes or topics, rather it's just like an odd extended line here or there, a sentence that was originally longer but cut down to make the dialogue flow a bit faster, that kind of stuff. In the commentary track for those deleted scenes, it stated that they went over on time when filming the stuff on the moors, and so lots of bits had to be trimmed down. One funny moment is when Mark uses a platoon or blackjack analogy when talking about Sophie.
Stick on a nice safe 17. I mean, no one gets 21, do they? It's a myth.
Referring to marrying her as sticking to a nice safe 17 is a hilariously unromantic way to describe the woman he's supposed to be in love with. Even in his messed up head, I'm not quite sure how that could possibly be seen as a positive way to describe your fiancé. Also, between the time period of Mark falling to the ground and Jez moving him to sit down, Mark actually wanted Jez to call the police to let them know they were out there on the moors.
Give the local bobbies a call, just to let them know we're out here. Do not ask to be rescued.
But not to say they needed help, just to let them know that they were out there, as it had caused too much of a fuss to rescue them. How very Mark. When Jez says Mark should just not marry Sophie, a cut line had Mark say that Sophie was the only person other than Carol Banana Face who'd ever looked at him. This unseen character was previously mentioned in another Series 3 episode, Sectioning.
Apart from Carol Banana Face, she's the only girl who's ever looked at me. Well, there was Carol Banana Face.
Also, there's a moment from the very end of the outdoor segment of the episode that gets extended here, and I think it makes the moment a whole lot funnier. When Mark and Jez go their separate ways, the episode normally just cuts almost straight away, but here we see them both constantly turning back to look at each other. It's a little thing, but I think it's really funny. Interestingly, Phil points out that the events in Quantocking hark back to plans for an episode from Series 2 that never happened. In that episode, Mark and Jez were going to go on a camping trip with Jeff and Sophie onto the moors, but Mark then angers Jeff somehow, and our duo end up getting chased overnight across the moors by Jeff. That's where the idea of them getting lost on the moors originally was from. Plus, other aspects from Quantocking came from that episode too, like the whole ordeal with the secret Twix and the chocolate rationing was also from that episode that never happened from Series 2.
Keep our spirits up.
Series 3 contains 3 commentary tracks, one for Mugging done by writers Sam Bain and Jesse Armstrong, one for Shrooming done by script editor Ian Morris and producer Robert Popper, and one for Quantocking by actors David Mitchell and Robert Webb. If you've been watching along with the video so far, you'll know how this bit goes. I'll pick 3 interesting things out of each of the commentaries to share, starting with Mugging.
Fuck off! Fuck off my stuff!
Sam and Jesse say that this episode was difficult to write because they originally included multiple characters who were then, for one reason or another, unavailable for the filming of the series, and so the episode had to be reworked to get around this. Michelle was a last-minute rewrite of Tony, and the opening scene was supposed to be in Tony's flat. Also, the woman coming back into Jeremy's life was intended to be Nancy, then had to be changed to Big Suze, a character that had been mentioned by name in episodes prior to this. Her boyfriend Stu is a monk because it was supposed to tie into Nancy's whole religious angle.
Yeah, you big lump of monk?
A core aspect of mugging is Jez's drinking. The way he's drinking throughout the day and while he's shopping is supposed to show that he has potentially become an alcoholic. Earlier drafts of this episode played into this angle a lot more, and one of them culminated in Jeremy attempting to kill himself by drinking himself to death, in a similar vein to Nicolas Cage's character in Leaving Las Vegas. They say that one of the reasons that this was cut is because it wasn't really believable and it felt a bit ridiculous.
It was while I was drinking that I came up with my plan about Stu.
What's your plan?
I'm gonna hit him.
And in what I found to be quite a refreshingly honest moment, both Sam and Jesse say that they feel that Series 3 isn't as strong as Series 2, and that 2 was the best series they've done up to this point. That's something that I definitely agree with as a fan of Peep Show, but it must be fairly uncommon for writers to say their older material was better than their current material on the DVD for said current material. They also comment on the fact that the initial 2005 pilot for an American version of Peep Show had just been shot at this time, and that they had seen it. They thought it was terrible too, obviously.
This isn't college anymore, Jeremy. This is the show.
The original bare bones idea for shrooming came from brainstorming Trapped in the Flat, in that for some reason the episode would be almost entirely self-contained and centered around Mark and Jez both being stuck inside of the flat somehow. Robert, Popper, not Webb, says that it was almost play-like and farcical, and while shrooming was obviously developed into being a bit more than trapped in the flat, it still is pretty much centered solely around the flat, and at one point Mark does, unfortunately for everyone, get trapped in his room, so some remnants of that initial idea are still visible in the final episode.
I'm locked out of a party that's happening in my own home.
Shrooming obviously revolves around some of our characters taking magic mushrooms and plays off a thing Ian Morris says he's a big fan of, drug comedy. And while somewhat sarcastically riffing around this topic in the commentary track, he jokes about a character getting his dog stoned and it stealing biscuits from a 24-hour garage. This is pretty much identical to a line from an episode of The In-Betweeners, which was created and written by Ian Morris alongside Damon Beasley.
I lost my dog, I got him stoned, he went and disappeared. I thought, where's he gone? Came back, a packet of Jaffa cakes. Or chocolate hobnobs or something.
Brilliant. The other day we got his dog stoned and he got the munchies, so he ran away for an hour. When he'd come back, he nicked a packet of hobnobs from the all-night garage.
It was stated by Robert and Ian that one of the things that they and the others behind the show wanted to do in Series 3 was to keep things relatively the same. They were careful not to change too much or push the show in a completely different direction, as after the brilliant Series 2 they didn't want to alienate their audience that they managed to build. That led to, amongst other things, changing the last episode of this series to be a lot more conventionally Peep Showy, as it was originally going to instead revolve around the cast all going to Paris. More on this later on.
Nah mate, nah, not for me. I'm cleaning up.
All of the cans of lager that you can see in this episode, as well as in basically every other episode after Series 2, are fake brands made up specifically to be used in TV shows. You see Corborn a lot in Quantucking. David Mitchell says this is because cans of Foster's were shown in Series 2, and that resulted in an episode, which I assume to be The Man Show, nearly being pulled from broadcast by Channel 4. I guess someone from Foster's didn't like their cans being in view. On my rips of the show I can still see the Foster's cans just fine, but I believe on certain streaming platforms like Netflix, the cans have been digitally edited or blurred out to obscure the Foster's branding. So to save the headaches of issues like that in the future, episodes here on out use special fake TV beer cans.
You stingy bastard.
Because the part of the episode in which Mark and Jez are lost on the moors features just the two of them and nobody else, and the scenes involve long portions of just shadowed faces staring at each other, there was a debate behind the scenes as to whether there should be cows on the moors too, and so for the first time in the show, you would get an animal's POV shot. This would help in establishing where exactly Mark and Jez are in relation to their surroundings, and would make the scene more visually interesting. They obviously didn't end up going down that route though, and so there's no weird cow cam, but you still do get shots in which you can see Mark and Jez, though these shots are just supposed to be another take on the establishing shots like you get of, say, The Flat or JLB, and they're not from a cow's perspective.
Right then. Hooray.
When Mark and Jez are playing darts, Robert says he's actually really good at darts, despite Jez not being, and he challenges all the Peep Show freaks to try and work out what score he's on.
So the score I got there? There's probably a whole new game for Peep Show freaks!
Of course, I attempted to do this, why wouldn't I? But then when doing so, I noticed that the placement of the darts isn't consistent between shots at all. They move pretty much every single time we cut back to the board. Here's a picture of the board after Jez's second throw, and then here after his third throw, for example. So I can't work out what score they're on because the score is always changing changing. Funnily enough, when the episode cuts to this shot here, showing the lack of dark continuity, David commends Rob on his good dark continuity. Peep Show, the scripts and more doesn't have any additional material within Series 3 section for whatever reason. However, at the very end of the book there is a segment titled The Genesis of an Episode that discusses the creation of an episode of the show and takes you through the drafts and thoughts of some of those involved. It's an interesting little thing in relation to this specific series though, because the episode that is highlighted is Quantocking, the 6th episode of Series 3. That episode initially started out, as I previously mentioned in the commentary tracks part, with all the cast going to Paris. It's a very different beast to what the episode ended up as. Tony and Johnson, two characters that aren't even seen in the final episode, were going to be getting married. Johnson attempts to kill himself, we'd see Hans and Johnson together, lots of interesting little things. But the reason I'm not combing through this too much here is that I've actually already made an entire video about this segment of the book in the past. You can find it on my channel if you so desire. And on that note, that's all the Series 3 material done. Definitely a strong series in terms of the additional material. Good job.
Now come on, fuck off.
Now on to Series 4, and what a brilliant era for Peep Show. Fantastic episode after fantastic episode, all topped off with an amazing ending. Perhaps because of simply how much great material the show had by this point, or maybe due to the ever-changing climate of physical media, the bonus features for this series become a bit more self-reflective, and are more of a celebration of Peep Show, rather than a trove of new episode-quality material. Was it worth making a whole bunch of presumably time-consuming episode-esque bonus clips that fewer and fewer people are ever going to see? Seems like no was the answer here, unfortunately.
Maybe, we're not so very different.
Yeah, no, we are different, that's clear.
There's fittingly 4 commentary tracks for Series 4, then deleted scenes of course, though not as many as we've had before. There's some behind the scenes videos of various things, and then 2 talking to the cast and crew about the show segments. One titled A Peep at Mark and Jeremy, where the 2 main characters are discussed, and the other, in which the cast and crew talk about their favourite moments from the show as a whole up to this point, is titled The Best of Peep Show on the back of the DVD case, The Best of Peep Show series on the inside of the DVD case, and The Best of Peep Show series 1 to 4 in the DVD menu. Make your mind out, guys. In this segment, you get a nice look at how the filming of Peep Show works. Not for the first time, as there have been extra bits like this before, but personally I think seeing this side of the production is quite interesting, given the way that the show is shot. You'll have the off-camera character just sat on the floor or something, reading their lines so that the person being filmed can record their half of the conversation.
Wow, just to clarify, you do mean...
Yes.
Something that is brought up is that during filming for this series it snowed quite heavily, but obviously you can't just have a few shots with snow in the background and the rest without. So work had to be done to make, for instance, a snowy exterior to Sophie's parents' house or a snowy car park look, well, not snowy. I think they did a pretty good job here though. I don't really have anything more to say about this one. Oh, other than the fact that the final day for filming of this series was on the day of a lunar eclipse apparently. Not a very fun fact, but it is a fact.
Well done to one and all, guys. That's a wrap. Thank you very much indeed, guys. Well done.
A Peep at Mark and Jeremy is a 19-minute video about the characters of Mark and Jeremy. Unfortunately though, it's not really that interesting. It kind of feels like something that only exists because they needed some more DVD extras to make up for not having new original material like they'd done in the past, and so they just did whatever they could to fill time.
That isn't the reason why.
Get some people to sit in an ugly, all-red room and talk for a bit, then split it up across a bunch of different extras. And don't forget the plant. It mostly consists of series producer Phil Clark just making comments about Mark and Jez. No new insights gained into anything really, and there's no behind the scenes footage. They didn't even get David Mitchell or Robert Webb to appear in a video about the 2 characters they play, which were specifically written for them, which I found a bit weird. Just because of the nature of this kind of thing, I can't really add anything more by commenting on it. You know what? Fuck it. Let's just skip straight to the deleted scenes and commentary tracks and come back to this other stuff a bit later on. They're a lot more interesting.
Hey, it's me! Surprise visit!
There are 5 deleted scenes included for Series 4, 2 from Gym, 2 from Handyman, and 1 from Wedding. The first chronologically in Gym is, I believe, an alternate version of the scene in which Mark and Sophie are eating together at the flat, the one in which Mark can't stop shoveling mashed potato into his mouth.
Mark, you're not full yet.
And the reason why I say I believe it's an alternate one is that the runtime is almost exactly the same as the one in the episode, so it would fit perfectly time-wise. Though on the other hand, in the original episode, this scene serves to set up the fact that Sophie wants to spend more time with Mark and join the gym, which is necessary for the rest of the episode to play out. Yet this deleted version doesn't do this, so I'm not quite sure how the rest of the episode will continue on after this point. So yeah, I don't know what to think. Might be an alternate one, might be an extended one, I don't know. Instead of saying she wants to spend more time with Mark, Sophie harks back to their higgledy-piggledy engagement in Quantocking, and says that because it all went down a bit strangely, whether he'd like to propose to her properly, despite them already being engaged.
Unless you really don't want to, it's some kind of horrible chore.
No, I don't mind. It's just a bit weird, because I know what your answer's going to be.
Mark begrudgingly plays along with all of this, in such an unnecessarily dry way, which I think is great. No time to entertain my fiancé, must get back to another heaping of mashed potato.
Oh, go on, please.
Okay.
Excellent, many thanks.
This moment is funny and continues the idea of his regret at not really but kinda proposing to her. Though like I said earlier, I'm not quite sure how this moment would play into the rest of the episode, as you need to set up the idea that Sophie wants to spend more time with Mark by joining the gym, which of course leads to the need to get Matt fired, which in turn leads to the events of the rest of the episode. So yeah, a bit of an unusual one here, but a fun one nonetheless.
Sophie, will you marry me?
I'll think about it.
The other from Jim is a lot more straightforward. It's just an extra bit of one-sided horseplay between Jez and Nancy when they're judoing.
Oh yeah, this is totally judo. I'm judoing you. You're being completely judoed.
Okay, maybe a bit more than horseplay. Note to self, judo suits do not have pockets.
What's in your pocket? You haven't got any pockets, Jeremy!
Then for Handyman, the 4th episode of the series. Normally we cut straight from the flat to the school reunion, but this little scene shows Mark and Jez walking to the venue.
School uniform. Jesus. I feel such a prick.
Jeremy thinks that people dressing in school uniform is pedo bait, and that Mark is a weirdo for being attracted to women his age dressed in school uniform, which Mark obviously denies. He's only a pedophobe.
Pedophobe. Oh, right.
What do you think I meant?
This deleted scene provides a very interesting little snippet of information though, as Jeremy confirms that at this exact moment, Mark is currently 31 years old.
Is it perfectly natural for a 31-year-old man to be attracted to a 31-year-old woman dressed up as a 15-year-old girl?
Yes, shut up.
And thanks to a very brief look at the invitation card that Mark holds in the full-length episode, we know that this party takes place on Saturday the 24th of February in the year 2007. Peep Show's always been a bit weird with giving dates as to when certain things happen or as to the ages of characters, so this is a nice bit of information to be able to use as a reference point. Mark was definitely 31 on the 24th of February 2007. Cool. Yet then take a look at the back of the Series 4 DVD case, which continues to describe Mark and Jez as late 20-somethings.
I mean, I'm not on the child protection register. Yet. Which proves I'm not a pedo.
The other scene from Handyman is interesting because it's actually an alternate ending, and a really good one too. Normally the episode ends with Foz finding Mark in the cupboard, having just been caught almost getting off with Sally Slater. Oh, I mean wanking over her. But this alternate ending actually has Mark and Jez returning back to the Orgazoid's house, as Mark's signed first edition copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was left there by mistake, and he wants it back.
Just so you know, if Russell expects certain favours in exchange for its return, I'll be happy to turn a blind eye.
But when they get there, Russell Orgazoid is out the front, and he doesn't look happy.
I'm not interested in talking to you, Jeremy. Not after this.
This is a great moment, and one that further intertwines the two sides of the story in this episode. Russell thinks Jez wrote Wankathon on his fancy garage door because he made him give him a wankathon, but it was actually Foz that wrote it while pissed off at the guy he calls Mark Wankathon for wanking over his girlfriend. It's great, and a brilliant ending to the episode, even though the original one is fantastic too. However, then it gets even better.
I think you guys better fuck off.
Hans?
Yes, the realization that Hans is still there working as the Orgazoid's handyman. Fucking brilliant. And look at what he's wearing too. It's the exact tracksuit that he'd eventually wear all the way down the line in Series 7. The one he was wearing when he accidentally ran to Windsor.
My legs are gone, man. I'm a jelly. I'm paralysed.
Yeah, I love this ending here. I think it's even better than the one that actually got used, which was already really good, and it rounds out the episode so well. But as for why it wasn't used, I don't know. It's a minute long, so in theory you'd need to chop 1 minute of other stuff from out of the rest of the episode, which I'm sure could have been done without too much of an issue. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but I'm glad it made its way onto the DVD extras and wasn't completely lost to time.
Not very professional, mate. Not very professional at all.
The final deleted scene is from the final episode of the series, Wedding. It's actually not entirely deleted, but rather an extra 20-ish seconds of dialogue from the middle of the conversation that Mark and Jez have at the car park on their way to the wedding. The car park that Mark would later make his lazy attempt at getting hit by a car in.
Sorry, I didn't see you.
Looking straight at me.
Jez suggests that instead of marrying Sophie, that he and Mark should just run away to Venezuela and start a turkey farm. Yes, really.
Why exactly are you so keen on going to Venezuela to start a turkey farm? Even if it was successful, which I very much doubt, Chavez would probably just nationalise it anyway.
A short bit with a little political quip from Mark. There's not really anything else to add to this.
Fine, no, I agree. It's great.
4 commentary tracks, and I'll pick 3 interesting bits from each one, yada yada, starting with Sophie's parents. The second scene in the episode with Mark, Jez and Hans at the flat was originally meant to take place outside of the flat, in a discount bookshop. So Mark would be clothes shopping with Sophie, while Jez and Hans would be looking at books for some reason, and then they would bump into each other. The idea with Jez taking the hoodie off was that he would be so embarrassed by wearing what Mark was wearing that he'd strip down in public because of it. This idea was moved to the flat instead though, as if the scene took place in the bookshop as it was originally planned, there wouldn't be a single scene that takes place in the flat in the episode, which Sam and Jesse didn't like.
Who the hell even cares?
The whole running theme of Sophie's mum being attracted to Jez and the two of them having sex was originally not the focus of Jez's side of the story, with it instead being more about his relationship with Sophie's brother, Jamie. Jez and Jamie were going to make a single together in a music studio that Jamie has, and in fact the location of Sophie's parents' house was specifically chosen because it had a room that they could easily make look like a music studio. Superhands was then going to come down and join them too, and then they'd all play this single to everyone at the party at the end of the episode.
You know, I fancy a nap, a nice relaxing nap.
The brown clashing and matching hoodies from the start of the episode were then supposed to play into something later on too. Someone, it's not stated exactly who, was supposed to have seen a person wearing this brown hoodie while noticing Dan Walker's barn being burnt, and because Jez got rid of his hoodie, it'd be obvious that the person at the barn burning was Mark, thus incriminating him. This idea was eventually dropped because it was deemed overly complicated.
Congratulations, you've killed a sentient being.
The Orgazoid's name was originally Wormhole, but they changed the name due to there apparently being a musician named Wormhole already that the producers couldn't imply was doing what Russell was doing here.
It's terrible. It's horrible.
At one point, Mark and Sally were going to meet up at Sally and Foz's house rather than at Russell's, and instead of hiding in a cupboard, he'd hide in a child's bed. He would then have to endure watching Sally and Foz have sex, and he'd question whether this made him a dogger. What a strange scenario.
I suppose so.
The trip to the safari park in this episode was an idea that had apparently been proposed for multiple series by this point, but it was always turned away for one reason or another. It was finally put into this episode here as the whole reason that Mark, Jez, Sally and Foz go there is for an ironic trip, thus making any comments about it being an outdated thing to do or a drab idea fully fit in with the premise.
You wanker, Corrigan.
Director Becky Martin says that if she could go back in time to change something, she changed the corpse of Mummy. She says that they used a toy of a fox as the corpse, but that she really doesn't think it actually looks real because of the paws of the toy. Both in the shot where Jez kills her and when Mark finds her in the bin, the paws are really focused on because they obviously couldn't show the head as it looked like a fox, not a dog. And so the paws always annoyed her and made her think it looked like it was obviously not a dog. I don't know about that though. I don't think the average viewer would really notice this. The dog corpse that gets burned is not the same toy though. That one's made of silicone as it had to be good to burn. Fuck! The scene with Mark, Jez, Aurora, Lucy and their dad Malcolm having lunch together was shot differently to how it eventually ended up in the final episode. It was changed during the editing process so that Jez and Aurora would leave at the beginning, when during the filming this actually happened much further into the scene. They did this because they wanted to speed up the scene and get Jez out of the room quicker, and you can kind of tell that something is weird with how the scene is put together, because neither side of the table ever looks at each other. We always cut to Malcolm in the middle before switching to the other side.
I've developed a portfolio of skills.
And I'm breaking my own rules here, but in the previous commentary track for Handyman, a bit of information was given about this episode, Holiday. Some early revisions of Holiday involved, somehow, an airport, drug smuggling, scuba gear, and a gun. It's not expanded upon as to what the actual plot would be, but yes, some early version of this episode featured a whole lot less canal boating and a whole lot more mad shit.
I can't think of anything to say. You start.
It only stayed in the just talking stage, but at one point Sam and Jesse had spoken to each other, and to David and Rob, about the wedding episode actually being made feature-length and being the Peep Show movie. It was somewhat inspired by another script that they had apparently written prior to this, one that wasn't originally about Mark and Jeremy. But in the end they decided that a standard-length episode would be the best way to take the wedding.
But I would, if you wanted. I mean, I will. Obviously I can't, but I would.
There were a lot of revisions to the various supporting characters made during the planning and writing process of the wedding. Big Suze took Nancy's place at one point, and then in another draft, both Nancy and Suze would appear, and they'd meet each other at the wedding, so you get this moment between both of Jeremy's big love interests. In one version, Suze replaced Hans's role in a lot of scenes, and she was the one that would be throwing up in the car and would be left behind in the public toilets. At one point, even Nancy's father was going to show up at the wedding for some reason, and they had actually cast an actor to play play him and everything, though obviously this character never appeared in the end. Other big supporting characters like Johnson were also planned to appear at the wedding, but the budget didn't allow for this to end up happening.
Come on, he got married, didn't he? Leave him alone.
The random woman that Mark proposes to in the coffee shop was originally not going to be a random woman. At one point, this character was actually April, the woman that Mark stalked to Dartmouth in Series 2's University Challenge. This idea was dropped, and then she became Sally Slater, the woman from Handyman, 2 episodes prior to this one. Notes that Ian Morris read aloud stated that Sally was apparently an alcoholic, and she was noted to have a link to dogging, showing that the idea that I spoke about earlier, in which Mark hid in a child's bed and watched Sally and Foss have sex, was probably still in the script at this time. Ultimately though, in the final episode, this character is just a random woman, as they thought that an existing character working in this coffee shop was too much of a coincidence, and it made this interaction too much of a big deal.
That's fine. No biggie.
Sophie's Parents, the first episode of this series, features an innocent man named Dan Walker getting his barn burned down by good old Ian Chapman, Sophie's dad. Normally Peep Show's big moments are fairly small scale, but here in the behind the scenes of this barn burning we get to see a pretty unusual moment in the show's production. Fire, gas, explosions, not really the kind of thing you would associate with the show outside of this one moment. It's stated that this is not actually a real barn, rather it's just basically some walls and a door, there's no roof. And while a burning sort of Molotov did get thrown inside, it didn't actually have any petrol in it, sorry to disappoint. The fire was started by fancy gas pipes that make fire look more impressive for the telly, plus, you know, health and safety in it. I don't really have much more to add to this segment. It's a video of a barn being burned and a video of people talking about a barn being burned. So instead, here is a clip of the weird noise Ian makes when watching the barn burning, which I find funny for some reason.
I suppose you're right. Plus me.
The Best of Peep Show Series 1 to 4, also known as The Best of Peep Show and The Best of Peep Show Series, is a video in which some of the cast and crew recall some of their favourite moments from the show. It's presented as a top 10, which I find a bit strange, given that this is multiple people's favourite moments and they don't assign any numbers to them themselves, but whatever. There is something interesting here, that being the text that pops up on the screen. Some of it's fine, but some of it a bit less so. For example, David says his favourite episode from Series 1 is the one at the Laser Bowl. That episode is known as On the Pull to us, but here it's seemingly titled Bowling. Was that the working title of the episode or something? I've spoken in the past about how episodes from early Peep Show, specifically Series 1 and 2, likely didn't actually have proper names given to them until later on down the line. Maybe this was just an earlier name for the episode. It follows the naming convention of Series 3, in which every episode name ends with ing, but that may just be a coincidence, given that, you know, the episode does feature bowling, and bowling does end in ing.
And I'm high, obviously.
Though during one of the commentary tracks, Jesse Armstrong refers to the episode Holiday as canaling, hinting that at one point they may have wanted every episode name to have the ing suffix. Jeremy Makes It was specifically an episode that I mentioned as having a different name on the DVD release. It was The Commission on there, but this feature does actually call it Jeremy Makes It. However, it states that it's from Series 3, when in fact it's actually from Series 2. But then later on, Jesse speaks about this episode too, and the text correctly says Series 2. David and Rob also speak about the 4th episode of Series 2, University Challenge, but it's simply called University here. Yeah, I don't quite know what's up with these. Oh, and if you're wondering, the bit that was declared the #1 best Peep Show moment in this segment was the bit from Series 4's wedding, in which Mark tells Jez to piss himself and then orders him to stop.
Shit, oh my god, this has got to be a dream. Nothing this bad could ever happen in reality.
Series 4 section of Peep Show The Scripts and More contains some interesting things, and interesting because, well, the main feature in this section is Mark and Jeremy's back and forth to each other through post-it notes and bits of paper. To Mark, look, I know what you think happened, and yes, you're right, I have eaten all your ice cream, but there are mitigating circumstances. You'll probably recognise this as a note that Jeremy left in Mark's Cherry Garcia ice cream.
Look, I know what you think happened, and yes, you're right, I have eaten all your ice cream.
However, that scene is actually from Series 5's Jeremy's Broke, not Series 4. There are 4 whole pages in this book filled with Mark telling Jez not to eat various things he had bought. Marks and Spencer's Gastropub Moussaka, Taste the Difference Chicken Tikka Masala, chocolate birthday cake baked by his mother, and they're a pretty fun read. But yeah, for whatever reason, this segment takes place a series too early in the book. I think it's a bit strange to include this whole spin-off joke that relates to a scene that the book hasn't even got to yet. I imagine that most people who'll be reading this book will be familiar with all the episodes already, so will be aware of Jez stealing food from Mark in Series 5. So it's not too big of a deal, but yeah, having this sprawling Series 5 reference slap bang in the middle of Series 4's episode script seems a tad odd to me.
That wasn't actually that funny,
was it?
Then also included is Jez's festive half dozen, in which Jeremy lists 6 songs for Christmas or something. I'm not quite sure what the context of this is supposed to be. 6 songs that Jez thinks would be good to play at a Christmas party? This doesn't relate to anything in the show. Though one of his 6 picks is Top Loader's Dancing in the Moonlight, which he says will be definitely played at office parties, which is a reference to Series 2's dance class, in which this song plays at an office party.
Yeah, you won't be so cocky, Jeff, when I come into the office with a Kalashnikov and 200 rounds of ammunition.
So Jeremy's 6 song picks are Aphex Twin Ventolin, which is definitely the kind of track that Jez would like to think he could make. Dr. Hook's When You're in Love with a Beautiful Woman, Ebenezer Good by The Shaman, and yes, he thinks this song is subtle. Top Loader's Dancing in the Moonlight, as I said before, but he notes that he actually hates this song, but it's a crowd pleaser, so he included it anyway. Aerosmith's I Don't Wanna Miss a Thing, which he says is his guilty pleasure song, and lastly his own track, Outrageous, though he gives it under the name Various Artists, which was the name he said his and Hans' band were currently working under in Holiday.
Right now we're called Various Artists, just to fuck over people with iPods.
But yes, that's Jeremy's festive half dozen. Add these 6 into his funeral playlist from Series 1's extras and you've really got yourself a Jeremy Osborne playlist cooking. And there we go, the end of Series 4's extras.
They were alright. Sort of.
So, Series 5 of Peep Show now. It's one that often seems to divide opinion, and I think extra-wise it will probably get a few sneers too. I noted in Series 4 that the additional material for the DVDs looked like it was moving in a bit of a different direction, in that we were getting a lot less new original material and more reflective looks back at older stuff, or a repurposing of the clips from the episodes from the series at hand, and that's definitely a trend that's continued here. No more wholly original Episode S segments like we've had in the past, not even a single full episode commentary track, despite having 4 in the previous series. It's a shame, really, but I guess I can understand the reasons for not putting in as much effort into the DVDs. Okay, so I've got some good news and some bad news.
Oh shit.
The good news is that there are deleted scenes included for Series 5, and even a commentary track for those deleted scenes. Hooray! The bad news is that there are only 2 deleted scenes. Yes, really, 2. Totaling a whopping runtime of 1 minute and 18 seconds.
What?
Bye then.
Now, I'm not complaining about getting more Peep Show content, because obviously this stuff is fun to see, but really, 2? It's a peculiarly low amount. Kinda makes you wonder why they even bothered including any in the first place. You know, undoubtedly there were more than 2 scenes that were cut from the 6 episodes, so it's weird that they only included 2 of them. Though remember I said that a deleted scenes commentary track is included as well, so indeed we do get a comically short one that features series producer Phil Clark and producer Izzy Mant. A 78-second long commentary track has to be some sort of record, surely. In and out of the sound booth in less than 2 minutes, and this is like a properly billed extra that's listed in the menu and everything. It's not some random undocumented second audio track that nobody is going to find. How bizarre.
It's sort of hard to be creative in that when you're really hungry.
But yes, 2 deleted scenes, one from episode 2 Spin War and one from episode 3 Jeremy's Broke. The one from Spin War is an extra moment from the time that Mark and Dobby find Sophie throwing up at the fuck bunker. In the complete episode we cut straight from Mark helping Sophie out of the bathroom to being outside with Jez, Hans, Ian and Barney. But here a moment is included in which Sophie interacts with Jez while he's stalling for time on stage.
Now I want all the ladies in the house on this side of the imaginary line to say, "Oh yeah!"
It is what it is, really. In the commentary for this scene, they state that this moment was Olivia Colman's idea, and she ad-libbed it because she thought it'd be funny if Sophie to be somewhere in the crowd responding to Jez.
And it was a sort of ad-lib moment from Olivia, who plays Sophie.
Yes.
And yeah, it's alright, but you can kind of tell that this wasn't something that was planned out too much in advance, because it doesn't really make sense time-wise with this part of the episode. Like, if Jess is still on stage and Hans and Barney are still backstage at the moment Sophie and Mark are leaving, how could they all be out there waiting for her? So yeah, I don't think it's really a surprise that this one was cut out, as it's not overly funny and it doesn't really flow with the rest of the structure of the episode.
Oh yeah!
But that scene was only 18-ish seconds of the 78 seconds. The one from Jeremy's Broke is a whole lot more meaty. It's a bit in which Jeremy returns to the sperm clinic for a second time, now even more desperate for money.
Oh, this is the life, running on empty. This is what Kerouac and Gandhi and Hugh Fernley Whittingstall and all those great guys are on about.
Given the clothes he's wearing, I think it's safe to assume that he goes here after not being able to sleep because of Saz and the Australians laughing.
I'm here to make another deposit at the sticky bank account.
I'm afraid it's no more than 1 donation per week.
Okay, look, let's negotiate. I can knock some out at half price. Call it a tenner a pop.
I think this bit is really good. Like, Jez is actually using the term sticky bank accounts seriously and then tries to haggle over semen prices.
Throwing away the chance to create a master race. I hope she realises that.
He's got the stubble he has in the second half of Jeremy's Broke too, and I think it does a great job at making Jez look like he's run down. I like that such a small difference in his appearance can make you see him quite a lot differently.
Only wish I didn't feel so incredibly hungry. Look, I need to eat.
He's so desperately hungry that he then eats half a half-eaten sandwich that one of his feckless cum-shedder brethren had left behind. I also like the contrast between here and at the start of the episode. There he was stealing a delicious Cumberland Final straw dripping in onion gravy, and now it's a sad-looking sandwich off a seat in the wank bank.
It's not rubbish, not yet. It's still in the packet.
This again is a fun moment, and I think it does a great job of showing Jeremy's desperation. However, does anyone else think that the voiceover is quite unfitting here? Like, what Robert is saying doesn't really fit with Jeremy's actions and body language, in my opinion.
It's still in the packet. I offend everything you believe in, don't I, woman?
Even though he's making faces like he thinks the sandwich is amazing and it's this big relief for him that he's finally eating, he doesn't mention it once in his thoughts. This moment here especially, I don't think the silence goes well with his body language. I think I just find it a bit weird that we have a scene building Jez up to be really hungry, and then when he finally gets to eat some food, his thoughts are on something entirely different. In the commentary, they say that they liked this scene, but it had to be cut for time reasons, and they thought that the idea that Jez was completely desperate for money had already been established anyway.
We sort of had to cut it for time, and we felt we'd got that beat anyway in the other scene.
I don't know though. I think with a small rewrite of that final interior monologue from Jez, this could have been a fun moment in the episode.
Thanks a bunch, Elgar.
Despite saying that the bonus features for this series were pretty lacking in comparison to some of the ones previously, something that actually is included here is one of the most unique features that we've had so far throughout all the series.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Sophie's Peep Show is a segment that goes back over some of Sophie's scenes from Series 5's final episode, Mark's Women, but gives her the audible internal thoughts rather than being exclusively done by Mark and Jeremy.
Just go up to him, act normal, he doesn't suspect a thing about me and Jez.
It's quite a big moment, really. Obviously it's just an extra, but it's the first time this rather obvious idea has actually been implemented in the show.
Chances are on a one-off, nothing's...
I believe Sam and Jesse had originally actually toyed with the idea of giving Sophie an internal monologue in the full show, just like how Mark and Jez do. They didn't go through with that idea, which I think definitely was the right decision. Being confined to the minds of these two people and not anyone else in the wider Peep Show world certainly gives the show its edge in my opinion. Knowing what characters like Sophie are thinking at various points in the show wouldn't feel right. It'd almost feel like cheating.
How's Jez?
Oh, fine.
Naked Jez on the sofa like a big plucked chicken.
Okay, so the first thing to look at here is how was this done exactly? The internal thoughts are obviously structurally integral to the way that Peep Show is both written and recorded. Mark and Jeremy's monologues aren't just played over random footage from the show, rather the gaps for them to happen are specifically allocated and are then overdubbed with the lines later on.
Why isn't she texting? Maybe she's dead.
So for example, you may need an extra 5 or so seconds of nothing in a take to give you enough room to insert the voiceover that then eventually leads to a character talking, or something like that. But then how does this work for this specific bonus feature, in which Sophie's voiceover is being inserted into scenes that it wasn't originally structured around?
Maybe he's actually moved on. He can't have, can he?
Well, there seems to be a few different ways that it was done. The first scene included is the one that starts the episode, in which Mark turns up at the flat to a stone Sophie giving him the annulment forms. I'll play the two scenes together so that they're initially synced up, and let's just kind of see what happens.
Shit, Mark. Lovely, horrible Mark.
Sophie?
Oh, hi, Mark. Oh, great. Massive pang of guilt. Maybe it wasn't okay.
I've been waiting and I thought...
Yeah, it might be a bit confusing like this, but I think it's the best way to show off how this feature was done. The scene has been chopped up and certain lines split up and moved apart from each other to allow for the extra Sophie lines to be inserted.
I've been waiting and I wanted to give you the annulment forms. I've been waiting and I thought... You're late.
But there's also that line in which Mark says he had 2.5 pints of Cronenberg, which was not in the actual episode, but is included here.
Yeah, I got promoted, so I had 2.5 pints of Cronenberg.
There's a similar thing in the next scene included too, when Mark and Sophie are talking at the JLB party. This bonus feature includes a line in which Mark jokes about how easy and casual an annulment can apparently be.
So easy, isn't it? Annulment. I feel like Henry VIII and I didn't even need to have a reformation.
There's new lines that aren't just voiceovers in the next scene too. And the next one. And the next one. In fact, every single scene that is used in this Sophie's Peep Show segment contains unused lines that didn't make it into the final episode. Here's a compilation of some of them.
You must miss me. I bet you miss me a bit.
Obviously, I do. Contraceptive, Johnny, it's... I don't...
Ooh, this old friend.
Yes, still broken.
Oh no, Soph.
You know, the fact that every scene in Sophie's Peep Show just happens to use scenes which had lines cut makes me think two things. One being, why didn't they include any of these cut line scenes in the deleted scenes part? I know they're called deleted scenes, but in every segment of them so far they've included altered scenes as well. Even if only 1 or 2 lines are new, it still would have been better than getting a mere 2 scenes. But secondly, is it really a coincidence that these Sophie's Peep Show scenes have extra lines in them that weren't originally in the episodes?
Yeah. Can you handle this, Mr. Corrigan?
The cutting of lines to make time happens throughout all of Peep Show and just TV in general, so it's nothing out of the ordinary. But part of me wants to think that Sophie's Peep Show was actually planned from the start, and that the script for Mark's Women was written with the creation of it in mind, so they'd specifically give characters lines that weren't going to be included in the final episode, just so they have enough extra footage to use for this one segment. The scene with Mark and Sophie drunkenly talking in Mark's office contains this moment where Mark stumbles a bit, plus it has different takes and lines from both Mark and Sophie at multiple different points. It really makes you think that this maybe wasn't something that was just scrambled together out of existing footage. In fact, I actually tried my luck and asked writer Sam Bain what the backstory was for the creation of this feature, seeing as he's actually replied to Peep Show questions I've sent his way in the past, but he didn't reply, unfortunately. Although you can't really blame him. Focus on your work, your family, your life, or answer questions about the production timeline of a 13-year-old DVD bonus feature.
I don't really want to do that again.
No, not me.
But whatever, enough of that stuff. Is there anything of note in Sophie's thoughts? Kinda. Apparently she considers herself to speak French to a conversational level. Maybe that in some way played into the whole Paris debacle from the last series.
Also has conversational French.
She was also faking being upset when Mark asked her if she'd ever considered an involuntary redundancy, which I guess may be inferred in the regular scene anyway, but I guess this confirms it, if you consider these extras to be part of the Peep Show canon, of course. Also, I don't know if it's just a me thing, but Sophie's voiceovers often sound more like Olivia Colman than Sophie, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the time her lines sound like Olivia Colman recording an audiobook or something. They're too clean, too sprightly. She sounds too proper and too nice to be the Sophie of this era of Peep Show.
I've really got to stop getting stoned so much. Although it is kind of brilliant. Okay, got him where I want him. He's back under the old spell.
The narration reminds me of voiceovers in Bridget Jones's Diary or a TV advert for a trendy new insurance company. Perhaps this is just how Sophie thinks she sounds.
Sophie Chapman, irresistible goddess. Yes, actually, Jeremy is a total slut. The sperms are no longer under his power. They're not like homing pigeons. You can't recall them, I don't think.
Maybe I'm just off base and have heard Mark and Jess's voiceovers so much that anything else just feels wrong at this point, but something just doesn't sit quite right with me about how her lines are delivered. It's the same kind of issue that I had with Jeremy's thoughts while he was eating that sandwich in the deleted scene. There's a bit of a disconnect between the characters' actions and their internal thoughts that makes them not work overly well for me, or at least as well as they do in the actual series. The voiceovers are supposed to be this intimate look into our characters. They allow us to hear things that they may not want to share with anyone else, yet oftentimes in this segment it doesn't feel like there's even much correlation between Sophie's actions and her internal thoughts. That could be intentional, sure, to show that Sophie's changed or gotten a bit out of hand post-jilting, but I'm not sure I'd agree with that take, at least not wholly. Yeah, I can't say I'm overly fond of this bit, but it is somewhat interesting getting a woman's perspective like this in a show which often intentionally doesn't want to let you know what any of the female characters are thinking.
What now? Staple his nuts to the desk and call security?
Mark and Jez obviously don't know what any of their love interests are thinking, and so us knowing and them not kind of ruins the intimacy of the show for me. I don't think an internal monologue from any other characters like this would have worked as part of the episodes proper, but as a one-off thing I think it's alright, if just for the novelty factor alone. Certainly an interesting experiment, and one that I'm glad exists.
Maybe this sperm will kind of blend inside me and I'll give birth to an anxious stoner who works really, really hard, but still never achieves anything whatsoever.
The behind the scenes feature for Series 5 doesn't just include on-set footage, but rather takes you through more parts of the creation of the show. Everything from initial writing to rehearsals to weather-related issues live on location at the fictional Christian Life 08 festival.
Loads fell down last night, all the fencing fell down.
One of my favourite parts of it is that we get a look into a writing room that Sam and Jesse have, which conveniently has a giant whiteboard full of ideas on it, some of which are actually legible. What do we have here? Machu Picchu? That eventually comes up 3 series later in Series 8's Big Mad Andy, when Mark is putting a dampener on Dobby's runner.
Living your life isn't just swimming with dolphins and climbing Machu Picchu though, is it?
HD ready, crossed out, I guess to indicate that it was being used, as that pops up in the final episode of this series, Mark's Women.
Yeah, but it's HD ready! It's HD ready!
Wheat intolerance? That shows up in Series 6, as Elena has one.
She's far too important to be able to tolerate wheat.
This one's a bit tricky to read. Think of our ship like work? I can't properly make it out. I take it our ship is relationship, and I'm fairly sure that last word is work anyway, but no idea what's between them. We can see some potential names for the game that Mark, Dobby and Gerard end up playing, Fantasy War Quest.
Don't go over there, it's a trap, those trees are not real trees.
Although annoyingly the first word is cut off, so Fantasy War Quest is up there, as is something Battle Quest and something Heroes. There's lots of other stuff on the board too, but it's not really that easy to read. But if anyone has the eyes of an eagle...
Eagle.
As wet as an eagle.
It really is.
You might be able to make something out. At one point, you see them in the process of going through the script for the episode Burgling, and if you look here, it looks like the document is titled To Burgling. Now that could mean it's a second draft or a second edit of the script or something, or it could mean that Burgling was at one point going to be the second episode of the series instead of the first.
Fuck off, I'm looking for Kenny.
At one point, we see the cast doing a read-through of the episode Jeremy's Manager, and we hear a conversation between Mark and Jez that's different to the one that eventually made it into the final episode.
She's teaching me how to do sex properly for the first time, Jez. It's never happened before, and I can't see it happening again.
Other than that, there's just lots of other clips of various moments from the filming of the series, which are nice to see. The Peep Show relationship tree is a pretty odd extra, perhaps the strangest one we've had so far. It's this animated flowchart kind of thing, narrated by Olivia Colman, probably at the same time she did that Sophie's Peep Show bit, that shows all of the various sexual or relationship links between characters at this point of the show, so the end of Series 5.
The Orgazoid also receives a similar service from Super Hands.
Why didn't you tell me about the wanking off bit?
Introduce a character and say that they had sex with someone, show clip that demonstrates this, and then on to the next person. Pretty standard stuff, to be honest. I guess it's just another way to make a bonus feature out of existing footage, but hey, it's a fairly unique one as far as these things go, and someone has clearly put some effort in here.
Super Hands also forces Barney, Sophie's cousin, to suck him off.
The final picture is fairly substantial, although it has little to do with the 13 minutes of video before it. Like, none of these connections we see being drawn in the feature mean anything in regards to the final outcome. For example, Tony and Superhands are shown getting a connection, but then they don't have one at all in the final image, even though they obviously should do. Don't know what's going on with that. Also, it's missing quite a few characters for no real reason I can deduce. Like, Barney gets on here because he sucked Superhands off, who had previously sucked Jez off, but then why not include people like Tony, the man, who had sex with Tony, the woman, who has slept with Jez? Nah, who cares?
They might shag each other.
There's no need to actually say it. If you say it, you'll break the spell.
Something like this would be kind of cool to see for the show once it's definitely all over. Maybe that's now, who knows? But yeah, the Peep Show relationship tree is a thing that exists.
And that concludes our trip around the Peep Show relationship tree.
There isn't really that much to say about the DVD for Series 5, however, something to note is that in the previous video in this series, I said that despite Mark and Jez both being in their 30s, they were still being referred to as 20-somethings on the box. Pedantic people rejoice, as now they're accurately described as being in their 30s, as they would have been for a while by this point.
You're what, 35?
Fuck off.
And also in the menu for this series, the episode that we all know as Jeremy's Broke is instead titled Jeremy Broke. Maybe Saz stole the apostrophe S along with Mark's dignity.
Yeah, speed dating. I'll be better off speed skating.
Series 5 is the last time that Peep Show, the scripts and more will be relevant to this video series, as it was published in October of 2008, after the end of Series 5 but before the start of Series 6. On the one hand, it's quite a shame to be at the end of the book, especially considering it has provided some cool bits and pieces that a lot of people probably don't know about, but on the other hand, yay, no more awkwardly angling a book with one hand while trying to scan it with my phone in the other.
We've gone into the crease. I can't make out anything in the crease.
There are 4 main segments in the Chapter 5 section of this book, the first of which is this, a letter written by 818-67321, though he's known as Jeremy Osborne to everyone else except Brutal Machines. It's a letter that Jez has written to his bank as a response to them telling him his account is overdrawn. It's a pretty funny read, full of the kind of shit you could definitely imagine him saying to Mark. Thought you might like to take 5 from running sweatshops, turfing widows out of their favelas, and feeding babies poisoned formula milk full of conflict diamonds to have have a read of this. That's a funny sentence, and it kind of reminds me of a line that Jeremy actually has in Series 5, one from when he's talking to Mark in the episode Jeremy's Manager.
I don't come round to your work and tell you how to run your sweatshops in Burma.
You know, the thing with these kind of segments in the book is that they're a whole lot better read on paper than being delivered with my boring voice, so I don't really want to just read out this whole thing, but I especially like the final paragraph, so here it is on the screen now. Thanks, dickheads. Oh, and by the way, all of these marks or stains or whatever else is on the page are actually printed on the paper. They've used this messy paper template for some of Jez's writings in the previous segments of this book, and I've always been conscious that some people might think that I am just the messiest reader in the world or something, like I'm staining this book. Everything you see is printed on the paper, and this is indeed Jeremy's weird tea stain.
Tea bags are allowed within limits.
Next up is a biggie. 4 whole pages of back and forth emails between Mark, m.corrigan@jlbcredit.co.uk, and Sophie, s.chapman@jlbcredit.co.uk. These are from around the time that Sophie is returning to work, so around the time of the episode Spin War. And yeah, that certainly adds up once you see the actual content. You know how in the episode Sophie's acting kinda like this?
I'm having a laugh, so I don't really give a toss. No, of course I fucking don't.
Imagine that, but in work email form, and you have this segment of the book. Fuck off, you jilting fuck. Dear fuckface, why don't you shove the meeting up your hairy ass, sit on it, fuckhead. Hey, maybe that's where Mark got that from.
You're a fuckhead!
It's basically a back and forth of Mark writing a long, overly Markish email, trying to be formal and trying to get things back straightened up at work, while Sophie replies with some variation of fuck. However, of course, given this much text at hand, there's a few bits and pieces to pick out and gnaw on. Sophie returning to work after 3 weeks rather than the previously agreed 6 is mentioned, just like in Spin War, and Mark is still not happy about it. Mark references Sex and the City, something he knows that Sophie likes, as it was her password way back in Series 2's dance class. Mark then says he watched Sex and the City on a pirated DVD with super hands, which is a bit odd, but he describes Hans as Jeremy's bandmate, which is obviously true, but Sophie would almost certainly know who Hans was at this point, even if they're not friends. He was even at their engagement together. Mark and Sophie apparently had a honeymoon booked, although it was never mentioned in the show. 3 weeks in Mauritius, wow, and he says that he took Jeremy there. Add that to the Peep Show lore.
What? No.
Mark leaves a PS saying thanks for the tuna, or heartbreak tuna as he'd call it in front of Jez, though he specifically mentions her father Ian as the one who brought it around. He was there at the door, sure, but it was Barney who really gave it over. No love for the B-man, it seems. Mark explains the circumstances around the wedding day. He aims to dispel a rumour that is apparently going around that he pissed on Sophie's aunt's head, when in reality it was Jeremy, and he only pissed on her hat, which has a wide brim, not her head. So I guess this woman here is confirmed as Sophie's aunt? Maybe? Mark makes up a bunch of lies about the wedding day to try and make himself look better, which obviously have no basis in reality, such as he says Jeremy was drunk and high and started raving about God and Christianity, and then started singing atheist hymns in praise of Richard Dawkins. Thus, Mark took him upstairs to hide him. Mark says that Jeremy became depressed until he was going to kill himself, as well as the soon-to-be married couple. So Mark wrote a note on a piece of paper to warn Sophie, folded it into a paper aeroplane and threw it, but he missed her and didn't get her attention at all. Brilliant. He then persuaded Jez not to kill himself, and then he protested for Jeremy not to piss himself, but he pissed himself. All over Sophie's aunt's hat, not head. Mark then sends an email out saying that the meeting he had been trying to involve Sophie in had been cancelled and his desk vandalised. Of course. This bit is long, as you can probably tell, but it's funny and backs up what he said in the episode Spin War, where Mark was receiving some shitty emails.
It's just mates and that.
Fuck off and shut up and die.
Next is a note from the big man Alan Johnson to Mark on the topic of the upcoming JLB Christmas party. This again is something that's better read than heard, so feel free to pause. There's a few standout bits here. Use of office equipment for sex-related tomfoolery is to be actively encouraged. Skunky Pete, mentioned a few times and seen in Jeremy's Broke, apparently works in the JLB post room. Who knew? Johnson also says go big on the nibbles, buy Pringles. Maybe Jez can help out with that.
I've got coupons for the Pringles.
Also, just something to note here. I was googling the fake dodgy beer name that Johnson gives in this email, Kralzondenberg, and I found that this specific note from Johnson was actually published online by The Guardian in Christmas of 2007 as part of an advert for Channel 4 airing Peep Show on Christmas Day. It's strange. This was before the book was published, or seemingly even advertised. It makes you wonder what else, if anything, from this book was actually released beforehand. It may not all be original material as we originally thought. Anyway, lastly from the book, we have a piece relating to everybody's favourite Peep Show cult, the New Wellness Centre. It's a transcript of a conversation between Jared, Jeremy, and a man named Edwin, who is actually the guy that Jez was originally interviewed by, played by Alex Lowe.
This next section is going to answer a lot of those questions.
Turns out that Jez's new name, Jared, was actually not something that he came up with himself. Jared was merely a name that was picked from a list of pre-selected names. This bit of the book is a bit drier than some of the others, to be honest. Most of it is just pretty predictable, making fun of cult stuff. Nobody knows anything in the world except the great leader, Solomon Hunt and his followers, blah blah. Though, is that SOLOMON, as printed in this book, or SOLOMAN, as shown on the 7 Sacred Truths book in the actual episode? Maybe both versions were on the same name list.
You've been going around thinking thoughts your whole life, and look what that's got you.
The same thing happens with the centre's website too. In an establishing shot on the actual episode, it can be seen on the front of the building as www.thenewwellnesscentre.org, whilst in the book it's newwellness.co.uk. Maybe they just have multiple domains. How have your friends and family responded to your spiritual journey? It can be quite challenging for some people. Yeah, challenging. That's a good word.
Challenging. He means challenging.
But yeah, here's the entire text. It's not that long, but as I said before, I think these bits are much better read than narrated by me. So if you want the option, there you go. And that's that. Series 5 of Peep Show comes to a close, albeit quite a bit later than I would have originally liked.
Because sometimes it's really hard actually to do your own ideas.
Peep Show Series 6. Wow, we're 6 years deep into the show at this point, with still plenty more to come. As always, there's a variety of bits and pieces included as bonus features for this series, although things are a bit different this time around in that the book, Peep Show, the scripts and more, has run its course, so there's nothing new to get from it. However, there is actually a different kind of non-DVD bonus material that is new for Series 6, some stuff that's pretty obscure, so there's still a fair amount to talk about.
Yeah.
Remember how Series 5 included an oddly short deleted scene segment? It included 2 scenes with a total runtime of 1 minute and 18 seconds. Luckily things are a bit different this time around. Yeah, now the 2 deleted scenes last for 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Yes, again, a mere 2 deleted scenes are included. Well, one's deleted and one's an extended cut of one that did make it into the final episode, but still, 2. Like I said in the previous video in the series, I'll take any amount of scenes really, and 2 is obviously better than 0, but it does make you wonder why they went from previously including so many to now having so little. For reference, Series 3 alone had almost 20 minutes worth of deleted and extended scenes.
Chance would be a fine thing. A fine thing indeed.
Maybe it's a result of, as I mentioned before, a decline in DVD sales because of the rise of streaming. But 2 scenes, yeah. The first of which is the extended one. They come with names on title cards this time, with this being Jeremy convincing Elena to split with Gail, which is taken from episode 5, The Party.
It's kicking off.
Some new takes they use for certain lines, and in this version, Elena says amongst all the poems and spelt flower bread, Gail would also get her flowers, which is a detail that was removed from the final episode.
She used to write me poems and buy me flowers and make me spelled bread with her bread machine. She used to write me poems and make me spelled bread with her bread machine.
No chamomile for you, Elena. After the line Jez has about moving to Russia or wherever the hell she's from is where the full extended segment is though. Elena's thoughts as to how she and Gail could possibly break up surely are imaginative.
She'd go away to Mexico. I mean, she does work in a Mexican restaurant.
Plausible, I guess. Wild weather? Less so.
Or get carried away by a whirlwind.
Look, we all wait around for a whirlwind to come and solve our problems. That's just human nature.
Jez also has a new motto.
Dump in a crowd, few recriminations are allowed. That's my motto.
It seems they wanted to make Jez saying he has these little phrases a thing in Series 6, as 2 episodes prior to this one, in the episode Jeremy in Love, he does pretty much the same thing again.
Discharge your pipe, then have a wipe. That's the rhyme.
So yeah, it's basically just an extension of the rest of the scene. It doesn't deviate from the original like some of the extended scenes from the previous series have done. But hey, it's funny, and I think the closing segment about Gail possibly murdering people is particularly good. I don't think you could surmise Jeremy's personality much better than this little exchange here.
She'll probably try to kill somebody.
If I have to die tonight, I'll die tonight. No way I'm dying tonight.
Okay, and now for the actual deleted scene, and I must warn you, some people are really gonna dislike this scene. If you fall on the lower end of the Dobby liking spectrum, and you think she's a bit obnoxious, to say the least, this scene is, well, it's going to be a bit rough for you.
Is it okay if I have quite a massive drink of any booze you've got?
It's from the episode Jeremy at JLB, where JLB shuts down and Mark does his JLB Survivors group at the pub. In the episode, we saw Mark getting Hitlered and then dissecting the JLB corpse, but we also briefly see the beginning of Dobby walking on stage with a guitar. The scene cuts before we actually get to see what she's doing, and as you may be able to guess, this is what we finally get to see here. Dobby sings a comedic song she wrote, and plays the guitar, and she tries really hard.
I said 1, 2, 3, 4, won't work for Johnson anymore. Said 5, 6, 7, 8. I've seen UK and EU figures, and they don't correlate.
Did you ever have to watch kids sing or play instruments at secondary school? Maybe in an assembly or a charity fundraiser gig or something? Because I sure did. And this reminds me of the feeling I'd get when put into those kind of situations, where someone is clearly feeling their performance.
I said 1, 2, 3, 4, JLB made me their whore.
I can handle nearly all types of uncomfortable or cringeworthy situations thrown at me, but person who's just a little bit too confident about their musical skills, putting on a casual performance and taking it just a bit too seriously is definitely something I find hard to tolerate. As I said, school throwback here, right down to moments like this.
I want the SFO to investigate.
Now, I don't listen to this kind of music, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but Dobby sounds okay. It's not like she's bad or anything, and I assume this is actually Izzy Suttie playing the guitar, maybe? It certainly looks that way to my untrained eyes. It's just the way that she carries herself that makes me not really like this scene. Also, it doesn't feel like a very Peep Show-esque moment to me, possibly why it was cut. A Dobby musical moment that is played completely straight, with no cuts to Mark, Jez, Gerard, or anybody else, and is, I suppose, intended to be funny to the viewer, is just odd. Like, I have to assume this isn't supposed to be anything other than a funny moment. Contextually, I see no clues that it's ironic or played to be cringeworthy, just straight up a continuous 50-second interval of Dobby singing a song. No voiceover from one of the leads, no reaction shot. Whose POV even is this? Certainly not Mark's, as I assume it's him leering behind the curtains completely silently for some reason.
Fight the power. Simple as that. Thank you.
The facial expressions too. I haven't said it many times throughout this look back at Peep Show's extras, but this is one that I'm glad didn't make it into the final cut.
The hell are you doing in there?
Behind the scenes features are a staple of the Peep Show DVDs, and the one for this series is a biggie, just under 23 minutes this time. It's shot and edited properly documentary-esque too, which is obviously great. There isn't too much new information to glean here, or things to pick out, but there are a few.
Sorry, we should sound more enthusiastic, I suppose.
The first one's a bit weird. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have ever noticed this before, but in episode 1 of this series, Jeremy at JLB, during the office vandalism hijinks, when Mark, Jez, Dobby, Gerard and Jeff return to the JLB office, this single random extra is just there for some reason, basically hidden in plain sight. He's the only extra present in this entire sequence. He is never mentioned or acknowledged at any point, he's never shown interacting with any of the other characters, and he randomly disappears halfway through and is never seen again. He isn't even present for the photocopier destruction.
Suck it up, you douchebag.
Well, the filming of this sequence is shown partially in the behind the scenes feature, so maybe you get a closer look at who this guy is or why exactly he's tagging along. No, nothing. This guy is not shown a single time in any of the behind the scenes clips of the JLB smashing, not even when the actors are milling around between takes or even just in the background or something. He's a complete enigma. Well, I say that, he's here, visible for a few frames at one bit during the filming of the scene at the pub, but not once during any of the JLB stuff. This character is just so bizarre to me.
Can you please stop doing that?
Who decided that one random extra should just come along? Not even one of the frequent extras like this guy. He does nothing, as I said, and just kind of vanishes into thin air at one point. I suppose nobody minds if the Invisible Man comes to JLB.
Exactly.
When doing a read-through of the script for The Affair, you can hear series producer Phil Clark saying this.
At the kitchen table, Jeremy's happily working on a life-size paper-mache bust of Edith.
A life-size paper-mache bust of Edith? Enid?
Bust of Edith.
Whatever name it is, it certainly isn't Elena, which is obviously the person he actually made the bust of. So I guess during the early stages of the show, Elena wasn't named Elena. In fact, the name comes up again when they're reading the script for Das Boot.
Fucking go! Edith says Gail can't see me.
Then when doing a read-through of the script for The Party, Rob is reading Jeremy's chicks with dicks, chicks without dicks speech that he leaves on Elena's voicemail, but he says this halfway through.
A whole crowd of cool cats and crazy chicks. Jesus, sounds like a petting zoo from the 60s. Chicks with dicks, chicks without dicks.
Is that possibly a voiceover line that Jez originally had here? Or maybe just a random interjection from Robert? Elena also had a different line in the party that didn't make it into the final episode too.
You said it was dying between you two.
I know, but then it just came back to life. Like a zombie.
When reading the test through, Jez says Mark or Mr. X instead of Mark or Jeff, like he says in the final episode, when Sophie's about to tell him who the father of her child is.
Me or Mark or Mr. X. Mr. X, please, Mr. X.
I don't really know why they would have done this. Initially, could it have possibly been that Sophie tried to hide the fact that Jeff was a potential father? There's also some behind the scenes of the boating trip from Das Boot, and writer Sam Bain was on set. He says that during a very early draft of the episode, Super Hans was supposed to be in the boat with Jeremy and Gail, and instead of her falling into the water, Hans would try and murder her somehow. He says it didn't really work and didn't fit in with the rest of the show, so it was cut. There's also some super sexy makeout footage of Mark and Dobby.
Everyone having fun?
Outtakes, with a space for whatever reason, are included here. It's the first time there has been a specific outtake segment for a series. There's 3 minutes of them, but I think describing outtakes would pretty much be the epitome of unfunny, so I'm not going to talk about them. But they do exist.
Gail's had her go, now I want first Gibbs. Gibbs?
Okay, now here's the interesting thing that I said was a new form of non-DVD bonus material at the start of the video. There exists a number of online exclusive videos that were put out by Channel 4 to promote Peep Show. These include behind the scenes footage and interviews with the cast that aren't found anywhere else. They're separate to anything that was included on the DVDs.
Hello, the hardcore fans. Thank you for being so hardcore.
They're still on YouTube too, on Channel 4's official channel. Search Peep Show Series 6 on the search bar on there and you'll definitely find them. There's interviews with Izzy Suttie, who plays Dobby, Neil Fitzmaurice, and James Howitt, who played Jeff and Gerard respectively, and Robert Webb, who obviously plays Jez. Plus an in-character interview with Patterson Joseph as Alan Johnson.
How to Have Everything, and Now! Exclamation mark, by Alan Johnson.
Izzy Suttie answers questions like, does Dobby really like Mark? And what is echo singing? And can you demonstrate it? It's this, apparently.
Trying to make me go to read it, how about I say they no.
This interview would have taken place during the filming of scenes for the episode Jeremy in Love. As you can see, she's wearing the exact same outfit as when Mark is doing his history tour. This day seems to have been a busy one for miscellaneous Peep Show material to come from, as this is also the exact same outfit and location that are in Dobby's Facebook profile picture, as shown in the Series 7 episode Man Jam.
Oh, we're the Dobby Club.
Johnson's message to his fans.
Welcome aboard the train. That's going to take you to the paradise that is Johnsonville.
In the behind the scenes videos, you get to see a lot of Banditos, the Mexican restaurant Mark works at. Some of the longest uninterrupted videos of the filming of the show that have ever been released are present here. You get entire scenes, which is pretty fascinating to see. It's impressive just how many moving parts there are behind the camera. On this small set, there are so many people all having to shuffle around quietly behind the camera and make sure to not get in the shot or in anyone else's way. And also, there's another new behind the scenes clip of the JLB raiding party moment, and surprise surprise, the mysterious extra does not feature here either. I bet I'm going to rewatch that episode at some point in the future and he's just straight up not going to be in it anymore. The only proof he ever existed being this video.
Headfuck or what?
These promo videos are something a bit different, and as I said, they're all on Channel 4's YouTube channel, so I'm not going to go over them too much, but you can find them easily for yourself if you want to watch them in full.
That's lovely. Thanks.
Despite the name, this isn't the same kind of behind-the-scenes stuff that's normally included. It's actually this half video footage, half animation thing that shows the viewer the 20 steps to make Peep Show. Yes, there's apparently 20 of them, although I guess I should say this is played as a jokey thing. Half of these steps are get something or something like that. It's not a serious video. Some of the animated bits are nice. I like the one of the construction of the set and the one for the costumes. There's some classic Peep Show outfits here. Sophie's dress, Jeremy's wedding day suit, Hans's parka. It's cool how recognisable some of these are. That'd be a good game. Name which episodes these outfits are all from. Also, great clip selection to use for the watch it go out on TV step.
I done the downloading. And then I done a wank.
But yeah, not really much more to say here.
Did you not come up with anything?
If Peep Show was filmed before a live studio audience is an example of what it might be like if Peep Show was filmed before a live studio audience.
Energy drink may cause anal discharge, etc.
You hear laughs from the audience that would be there if Peep Show is filmed before a live studio audience, and it has stereotypically goofy sounding music that you might expect from comedies filmed before a live studio audience.
I'm tired of staring at my own winkle all day.
And careful bringing a new one in.
Ultimately though, I think you can probably grasp the idea of if Peep Show is filmed before a live studio audience without even watching if Peep Show is filmed before a live studio audience. But if you can't, and you think it would be interesting to see what it would be like if Peep Show was filmed before a live studio audience, the closest thing you're going to get is if Peep Show is filmed before a live studio audience.
I wonder what crazy shit I'll be getting up to next week.
Series 6's DVD is a bit weird, specifically the box, which has a few quirks. For example, what's up with the punctuation in the text on the back? Some symbols don't seem to have been printed like they should have been, leading to things like Mark is the sensible one, a credit manager. And how will this affect Mark S' pursuit of Dobby? Mark S? A weird issue with the apostrophe? Or maybe the identity of the mystery JLB raider? He was there in his pursuit of Dobby and left because Dobby's hard-on was coming all over someone else. Case closed, we got you, Mark S.
Hadn't actually thought about that.
The quotation marks also don't seem to appear properly on the back here either, leading to spaces inside of the brackets. I wonder why or how all of this stuff happened. It's not something that I've noticed on any of the cases before this one. I wonder if it's only on certain releases of the series or something, and if it was possibly fixed at some point. I don't know. If you got a copy of Series 6, try checking the back out and seeing if yours is like this too.
Why?
Why? Why, she asks. Yes, why?
So yeah, Series 6, despite the lack of any real big bonus content and the small amount of deleted material, I still thought this series was quite a fun one. Although, as you can probably tell, I'm working with less and less material every time now. On that front though, Series 7's up next, and not to give anything away, but Series 7 is somewhat of a unique case, to say the least.
You're overanalyzing, but people will be laughing so hard they won't be thinking about what it does or doesn't mean, Jeremy.
Series 7 now, and this is certainly a peculiar Peep Show series, DVD bonus material wise. In short, there isn't any. Yep, just straight up, there's no bonus features or additional material for Series 7 of Peep Show at all. You can see here that the back of the DVD case is missing that little bonus feature box that all the other series have had, and here's the menu, just the episodes and a subtitle toggle. That's it. Obviously, this is quite disappointing. I know I've mentioned how the DVDs were certainly getting less extra filled as time has gone on. We went from completely unique standalone segments with all new footage, loads of specifically written dialogue, large amounts of deleted scenes and behind the scenes material, to now nothing at all. Not even any repurposing of existing footage that took up the bulk of material on the last few DVDs.
Yes, you do surprise me.
Series 7's DVD came out in 2010. Streaming services were becoming more and more prominent at this time, and Channel 4 had 4OD, their online service, which is free and readily available, so Peep Show is easy to find and watch without the need for any physical media. And if you're getting fewer and fewer DVD sales, at what point do you just say that it's not worth putting any more effort into them than absolutely necessary? Well, seems for now that that point was Series 7.
This is the end times.
I'd have liked to have seen some behind the scenes stuff for this series. There's a whole lot of unique and interesting characters and locations that are never seen again after their appearance here, which is a shame. No deleted scene with Hans and Mark's mum, or a behind the scenes of Mark's jump out the window to escape the Nether Zone. But as you can probably tell by the runtime of this video, and the fact that there will be no reason to make a video about nothing, there is something to be discussed. In fact, two things.
Two? Oh, that's not enough.
Neither of them are technically additional material for Series 7, but they are both pieces of Peep Show media from Series 7's era. Yes, the only series of Peep Show with no DVD bonus features just happens to have multiple related pieces of media from right around its release. Is that a coincidence?
I guess.
Channel 4, who are the TV network on which Peep Show is broadcast, used to hold an annual event named Channel 4's Comedy Gala to raise money for the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. These are mostly stand-up comedy shows with a big lineup of comedians doing whatever it is they do, but the galas also include special one-off clips and shorts from other celebrities or from some of Channel 4's other programming. And as you can probably guess, one of these galas, the 2010 one to be specific, contained a one-off 3-minute-long Peep Show short titled Charity. This has never been released anywhere other than the TV broadcast of the event and this DVD here, the official release of the 2010 Comedy Gala.
God, this is like after sex. Now I'm going to have to talk to him.
To be more specific about dates, the live event that this was part of took place on the 5th of April 2010, which places it directly between the end of Series 6 and the start of Series 7, hence why I'm including it as part of this Series 7 video. Now technically that poses some questions as to when exactly the events of the short would take place in the world of Peep Show, as the last episode of Series 6 leads directly into the first episode of Series 7, but I don't think it's really a big deal. Although nothing in the short contradicts the Peep Show lore, I doubt it was ever intended to be a genuine addition to the story of Mark and Jeremy, so I'm just going to view it as its own standalone thing.
Super.
So in the short, Mark and Jez are at a cafe or a pub or whatever this place is. They then have a short conversation and Jez donates some money to a charity collector for the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. They then get the bill for their meals and Jez realises he accidentally gave £20 to charity instead of the tenner he intended to and can't pay the bill, so then he asks for the money back from the charity bucket.
And can you make sure all of my money goes straight to the kids?
It's a kids' charity.
It's just over 3 minutes long and takes place entirely on one small set, one which isn't a location used in Peep Show before this, and obviously the actress that plays the charity collector, the only speaking role outside of Mark and Jez, isn't someone who has appeared in the show before either. The most notable thing about this short is probably the fact that it contains a laugh track.
I'm not saying you're trying to cream it off like a fat cat, but just let's make sure it goes.
Yes, we went from jokingly including a laugh track of a Peep Show in the Series 6 bonus features, showing how ridiculous and unnecessary it is, to legitimately having Peep Show with a laugh track, or I guess I should say audience laughter, because this isn't something added on after the fact. All of the various clips and shorts in this comedy gala have audience laughter in them because this actually was being played in front of a big audience, and you can tell the audio in the short is coming from microphones at the event because everything has a very slight but definitely noticeable echo.
Oh, great. That's all they're getting, is it?
So no, this isn't some heinous crime of the boffins behind Peep Show choosing to include audience laughter in their short. It's simply there due to the context of why this thing even exists in the first place, which is fair enough in my opinion. Though of course, it would have been nice to have a clean version of the short with just the source audio, but unfortunately that isn't something that was ever released. Also on that front, they most likely didn't have the rights to use the normal Peep Show audio for this event, namely the main theme Flagpole Sitter by Harvey Danger, as it has instead been replaced by some generic sounding rock music, the kind of thing you'd pluck from a stock audio library because it sounds vaguely similar to the actual theme, without being the actual theme. Well, maybe vaguely is giving it a bit too much credit. It has a guitar in it. There's nothing from Pip Pop Plop by Daniel Pemberton either, and it's strange hearing Peep Show without either of its two most recognisable pieces of audio. Mark reads a newspaper while he's at the table with Jez, and he skips past the real news to go to the sports section, bringing the conversation on to football. Jez asks Mark who he supports.
I like to keep an eye on Stoke.
You do not keep an eye on Stoke.
Yep, Mark lies about being a Stoke City fan, who I don't imagine call themselves Stokers.
Gran was a stoker.
Stoke is obviously irrelevant to the rest of the short, but the city does get mentioned again in Series 9 of Peep Show in the episode Gregory's Beard.
Obviously don't rap. Remember? After Stoke.
After mistakenly donating 20 quid instead of 10, meaning he can't pay the bill, Jez suggests doing a runner, something which Mark definitely doesn't want to do. The same situation happens again in a Series 8 episode, Big Mad Andy, when Dobby also suggests running away from the bill.
Let's do a runner.
I am not doing a runner, and if I'm not doing a runner, you're not doing a runner.
Should we just fucking do a runner?
But unlike Dobby in that episode, Jez cannot be so easily dissuaded, so he tries to do the runner anyway, resulting in the ending moment of the short.
My friend here is in the process of doing a runner.
There's not really much more to it. This charity short is fun as a novelty, and I like the fact that we get to see Mark and Jez in just a random, ordinary situation outside of any big overarching storyline, but I didn't think it was overly funny, to be honest. But I think this is a moment in which we need to detach ourselves from the little Peep Show world that we live in and consider the wider picture here. This is a comedy event for charity, played in front of many people that probably aren't familiar with Peep Show at all, so they weren't really going to make anything too outrageous.
This is fucking wicked.
Copies exist in various places online if you want to watch it for yourself, which I would recommend seeing as this is such a unique Peep Show oddity, but there's not really that much more to it outside of the novelty of the fact that it exists in the first place.
Don't look away. Stay with it.
On the 24th of December 2010, Christmas Eve, Channel 4, the network on which Peep Show is broadcast, aired a TV documentary named Peep Show and Tell as part of something named Peep Show Night.
Good evening and welcome to Peep Show Night.
Peep Show Night was a celebration of Peep Show, and it featured the Peep Show and Tell documentary, as well as the first broadcast of the Series 7 episode Seasonal Beatings, hence this being on Christmas Eve, and 2 episodes that were picked by fans. Those were Shrooming from Series 3 and Wedding from Series 4. An official Peep Show documentary, you might be asking? How have I not heard of this?
Don't start yet. Just let me get settled. Okay.
Well, as far as I can tell, this documentary was only ever broadcast a single time, that one airing on Christmas Eve 2010. I can find no record of it ever being played again after this, nor can I find any evidence of it being able to be streamed online or rewatched officially. It seems that this documentary, which ran for an hour including adverts, which features all new interviews and previously unseen footage, was literally only made to be shown a single time, and then it was brushed under the carpet, never to be heard from again.
Too right. We're moving on.
A copy of it survives online on YouTube, and I had a copy already too, plus people have sent it to me a few times over the years, but as far as I can tell, all the digital copies online are taken from a single original source, which is the same copy as the upload on YouTube. So unless anyone can tell me or show me any different, I do not believe a high quality copy of this documentary publicly exists anymore, which is a massive shame. It's kinda crazy that a piece of Peep Show media from as recent as 2010 could have genuinely been considered lost media had it not been for a single recording that somebody made. Now there's possibly a reason as to why it was never broadcast on TV again, that being that the documentary was specifically made for Peep Show night, and it's spoken about in the footage.
Welcome to Peep Show night!
I guess that would have been a bit confusing if it was shown again on TV when it wasn't Peep Show night, but for online streaming I don't really see the issue.
Looks like you're in trouble there, mate.
The documentary includes lots of classic Peep Show moments, as you'd obviously expect something like this to, and as it's 2010, you get songs like CeeLo Green's Fuck You playing in the background as though we hadn't heard that enough times already.
He's bringing it up. Oh, he's taking it down. He's taking it down.
But I'll skip over all the general clips from the series and just look at the stuff that's new. The major thing of note is that we get the best look at POV that we've ever had. POV was the name of the show that would eventually become Peep Show. Here's what I assume to be some sort of title graphic. POV was originally thought out to be, as it's referred to in this documentary, a real-life Beavis and Butthead. You'd have two characters reacting to things they watch on TV and they comment and joke about. For the first time ever, clips of the pilot episode of POV are shown, and this is just amazing for the hardcore Peep Show fans. This is the root of everything that was yet to come.
You know this cartoon thing I've got going with Sophie at work?
Yeah.
Well, do you think it would be over the top if I did something in oils?
What's your usual medium?
Biro.
Through the clips I'm showing, it's pretty clear to see ideas which would later make their way into Peep Show.
Brown for first course, white for pudding.
Bob Ross, white and brown toast, Sophie giving Mark her number, just some of the things that were present here that stayed all the way until the actual show was made. Plus, Mark and Jez just sat on the sofa watching TV, which was the original idea for POV, happens quite frequently in early Peep Show. The full-length episode of POV has never been released, so even these short little clips are nice to have. They may genuinely be all we ever get to see of the POV pilot, and yeah, imagine like I said earlier, if a copy of this documentary was never recorded, they'd just simply have been lost. There's a moment in it in which David and Rob are talking, and Rob gets on the topic of Super Hands. He says that he loves the name Super Hands because it's such an odd name for a major character in a sitcom. He then says this.
I mean, what the fuck? Why don't you call him Simon?
What? Super Hands' name being Simon was only unveiled in the episode Gregory's Beard from Series 9.
Simon?
Simon? Super Simon?
So did Robert already know that Hans' name was Simon, even though it wasn't known in the show at this point? Or is there a chance that Sam and Jesse took Hans' real name from Rob's comment in this documentary? Honestly, I doubt the latter, but it really is a strange coincidence if his name wasn't yet decided on as being Simon at this point in the Series 7 era. There's some new behind-the-scenes footage included, like another look at Sam and Jesse's writing room, although you can't make anything out from the whiteboard like you could in Series 5. Plus, there's videos of script read-throughs for the cast.
Real.
This really feels like stuff that would have been on the DVD bonus features of any other series. Could the creation of this documentary have somehow stopped the creation of bonus features for the series or something? Like they recorded the behind the scenes stuff but used it for this documentary, which was made well before a Series 7 got a physical release, and so they didn't want to or couldn't use the footage? Really, we have no way of knowing, but it does make you think. Also shown is some behind the scenes of the creation of the flat set again. It seems that it gets remade for every series, plus some clips of Zara's flat and the hospital. But one clip also shows a terrifying David Mitchell sticker. Are you ready? Ready for that grimace? No thanks. Send that back to hell alongside the David Mitchell from the Russian cover of Magicians. There isn't much more to say about this documentary really. The vast majority of the runtime here is interviews with the cast and crew that I'd say are probably worth a listen, but if you're in a position like I am, where you've seen these same people get interviewed about the same things over and over again, you aren't going to get too much that you haven't already heard before.
What? Fuck you.
So I guess I'll leave it at that. Obviously Series 7 didn't have any true bonus features, but I'm glad that there was, just by pure chance, well, I assume chance,
Chance would be a fine thing.
multiple pieces of tangentially related pieces of Peep Show media that released during the era of this series. And to quell any questions about what the series having no bonus features means for the final 2 episodes of this video series, I guess I'll just spoil the fun a bit and say that luckily some bonus features do return for Series 8. This one was just a bit of an outlier. So, on we go.
Bada bing, bada bye.
Bada bing, bada bye.
Now marks the start of Series 8. If there's any series that could be picked out as the one that most people tend to like the least, it's this one. Thankfully though, Series 8 marks the return of there being extra content to talk about, unlike in Series 7. Not a lot, but at least there's something.
He couldn't do it twice.
No, that would be impossible.
6 minutes and 57 seconds of footage is shared from a total of 7 scenes, though as has happened most times deleted scenes are included, some of this is not fully deleted stuff, but extended footage of scenes that did actually make it into the episodes. The first one is an entirely deleted scene. Mark, Baby Ian, Jeremy, Dobby, Hans, Gerard and a dog are going for a Sunday walk in the park for some reason.
How did this happen?
The fact that Gerard, the little elephant man, is still alive and kicking at this point means that this is from episode 1 of the series, Jeremy Therapized. Gerard dies of flu about halfway through the episode.
He died of flu?
So unless he became a literal ghost at the feast, this is from near the beginning.
That is so Gerard.
I know.
In fact, it probably slotted in directly before this scene here, the one in which Mark hands over the thing he loves best to the man he hates most. Although it is still a little confusing, the scene before this in the episode is the one in which Gerard is ill in bed. So did they take him out for a walk right after that moment? Did he ever get to eat his grey matter pie? But yes, our band of weirdo characters have all gone to the park. Jeremy has a pushchair, Dobby a balloon, and Gerard a dog. I don't think it has ever been mentioned before that he has a dog. Well, I'm assuming it's his because he's holding the lead. We know Mark and Jez don't have one, and neither does Dobby. So unless Hans has a mystery canine friend, it seems Gerard did indeed have a little dog. That can't have been good for his immune system.
That's not businesslike. It's not even a proper disability.
Mark, in a fairly creepy way, refers to Dobby as being wild and free while she's playing with the dog, which leads to a discussion about Joseph Fritzl, because of course it does. Jez thinks Mark is a Fritzl type, which he denies.
More of a Fritzl type.
I'm not Fritzl.
Touchy? A Fritzl type, Mark. Fritzl type.
However, if you remember your random offhand lines from Series 8, you might notice something a bit odd here. Mark actually does mention locking Dobby down like Fritzl in the second scene of this episode.
Get her into the flat and keep her locked down like Fritzl.
That scene, the robots cooking one, takes place before this trip to the park. So what's happened here is the fact that Jez also brings up Mark Fritzling Dobby a joke. I mean, obviously Jez bringing this up is funny, but you know, also a joke in that Mark denies he's the Fritzl type, despite us viewers knowing he thought about it earlier on. That's what I'd assume, but the fact that he never references this in his thoughts is a bit strange if that's the case.
God, no, why bring Fritzl into this?
Or could it be that this scene was going to be cut, but they liked the Fritzl line and so reinserted it back into another scene so that it could be included? That definitely seems like that could have been done, considering the line is a voiceover one in the actual episode, meaning that it could have been added in during the editing process, when they knew the park scene was going to be cut. Whatever the case, I think the inclusion of this stuff was definitely worth it. Mark definitely is the Fritzl type.
You can't go yet. I won't let you go.
The rest of the non-kidnap, non-dog related stuff is mostly relating to Gerard, the sickly Casanova. And again, it brings up a few questions. So Gerard is weak and needs to rest, and Dobby says she wants to make sure he gets home alright and wants to go and tuck him in.
I might make sure he gets back alright. Tuck him in. You know what he's like.
But remember, the scene prior to where I think this scene would have been is basically that same situation already. Dobby goes round to Gerard's place to make sure he's okay. So what's the structure here? Mark and Dobby go to Gerard's place and make sure he's okay, then go to the park, and then Dobby again goes back to Gerard's to make sure he's okay? That would be a pretty pointless sequence of events. So you may think, hey, maybe that scene of Gerard in bed was meant to come after this park scene, and that this is where she tucks him in. But no, that can't be the case, because the clothes that Mark and Dobby are wearing are different to those in the park scene.
Tuck me in, tuck my cock right in there, Dobby.
But then it makes me think, maybe this was actually supposed to be the very first scene in the episode. The clothes that Mark, Jez and Hans are all wearing in the actual opening scene of the episode are the same as the ones they have on at the park. And maybe the Dobby returning back to Gerard's house to tuck him in bit was said because they wanted to set up an initial instance of him luring her around, which would explain Mark's surprise appearance the second time she goes. One of Mark's lines is actually aiming for a bit more Connect foreplay, which could indicate that indeed she had already gone round once this episode already, in a scene that we never saw get set up.
I'm gonna block your bright red cock.
Okay, so logically it does make sense that the trip to the park could have been the opening scene. The voiceover that Mark says at the beginning of it does sound very much like a bit of an episode opening exposition line.
Sunday walk in the park, the Swiss Family Robinson gone wonky.
And as I said, the clothes in the scene that would then follow this do line up, but now I'll unfortunately ask some more questions. So if Mark has baby Ian at the park in the opening scene, where is he for the period of time between the park and Jeff picking him up? Mark goes to Dobby's place. Where's Ian? Mark goes to Gerard's place. Where's Ian? Is he in the flat with Jez? I doubt it, seeing as Mark didn't seem at all bothered by Jez and Hans having a fucking fire in there. Also, another thing, if we assume the park scene is the opening one, the clothing of the characters still doesn't add up. It'd mean that Mark would have had the dark blue shirt in the first two scenes, the light blue shirt in the next two scenes, and then the dark blue one again for one more scene. Jez has the same outfit on during the park and burning scenes as he does at Jeff's pickup too.
Jeff, I think it's okay.
So basically, while nothing in this park scene is technically wrong, structuring it into the episode presents a huge mess. Honestly, my theory is that I think someone fucked up the continuity for the start of the episode and there was no real way to salvage it without cutting the park scene, so they took what they could reuse, that being the Fritzl line, and inserted it back into the episode elsewhere, ditching the rest. That's the only real thing that I can think of that'd explain this whole situation. And still, where the hell did Gerard's dog come from?
Sarnie's God, he loved a sandwich.
So now onto a scene that's a bit more light. It's a bit from just before the start of episode 3, The Love Bunker. Mark, Jez, and eventually Dobby are discussing Simon and the website gang coming around, and just general party stuff. Jez says this:
"Don't get high on your own supply."
Which is reminiscent of something he said in Series 6's The Test.
"Slipping effortlessly from getting high off her own supply."
There's another scene included from the same episode too, in which Jez is getting ready for his first life coaching appointment with Neil. It's a good one for classic Peep Show props, as two of them get spoken about. Jeremy's fuck work, let's fuck poster, which he's had all the way since Series 1.
Don't worry, I am going to take the poster of the lines doing it down.
And also his bongo gets a mention too. Or is it a small table in the shape of a bongo?
You weren't carrying a there was no bongo.
The next two are from episode 4, Big Mad Andy, and are both related to cats. As you may remember, that episode starts out with Dobby saying she likes cats, so Mark then gets one to try and convince her to move in with him. It's handled a bit strangely though, as after the scene introducing the cat, the only other one that really focuses on it is the one in which it's given away. That changes here, with firstly, a scene in which Mark and Jez visit the cat rescue centre to choose one. When talking to Jez, Mark says this:
I want to use it to try to lure her into moving in, like a classic 70s pedo in a Ford Granada.
And now, even though this cat rescue centre segment was cut, the line still made it into the final episode, now being an internal thought Mark has when he brings the cat home.
And this cat's gonna help me lure Dobby in, like a classic 70s pedo in a Ford Granada.
Jez also really likes cats, it seems, and wants to rescue all of them, which is nice. Unfortunately for him though, in the second cat-related deleted scene, we learn that he's also allergic to cats.
A little bit badly allergic, yes.
There's one scene from episode 5, Chairman Mark, that centres around Mark's nephew Joshy, in which Jez does more of his arm flailing, dancing. Then the last scene included is really weird to me. It's from the final episode of the series, the fan favourite, Quantocking 2. In that episode, Mark and Jez both end up on a train to go and see Dobby. It's there that Jez admits he loves Dobby and so on, but the two make a deal and Jez agrees not to tell her. In this included scene, this moment is extended because of the contributions of this guy.
Personally, I think you should tell her.
Excuse me?
Yep, a random passenger on the train just interjects mid-conversation and gives his thoughts on the Dobby situation.
Just think she has a right to know before you propose?
Oh, you do you?
This is such a peculiar moment. I can't really think of any other times from the show that feel like this. I'm not saying it's bad though. In fact, scenes like the train one in the original episode have always been a slight pet peeve of mine. Not anything important to the scene, but the fact that none of the characters in the background ever react to or even just seem like they can hear what our main characters are saying.
You think I'm some kind of sex duckling who'll follow anyone around who's got breasts and a vagina?
So for this one moment here, it's kind of refreshing that someone actually jumps in and says something, as though Mark and and Jez actually exist in the real world. This moment is kind of funny, especially Mark's comment on the Da Vinci Code, but it's the sort of thing I fully understand cutting out.
Apologies, sir, but he's reading the Da Vinci Code.
I'm sure most of us are in agreement that Quantocking 2 is not exactly the pinnacle of Peep Show storytelling, and adding in this extra 40 or so deleted seconds would have meant something else would have had to have been cut, and the ending already feels incredibly rushed as it is.
She's flying to New York tonight with Simon. She's taking the job.
Is this a funny joke?
The only other piece of bonus material included for Series 8 is a 7-minute long compilation of bloopers. As I said for Series 6's video, I think describing them is pretty pointless and removes all the fun, so I won't. And that's that for Series 8. The end is nigh as Series 9 soon approaches, but luckily Series 9, as Series 8 did, also features a return of bonus features, so that's good news for us.
And so the descent into hell begins.
Wow, Series 9, the final series of Peep Show, at least so far. I'll save the usual spiel about the quantity of bonus features, as I think we've all probably get the idea by now. But yes, for possibly the last time, the Peep Show additional material.
I know you're stalking Dobby. I tracked your IP address.
2 minutes of deleted footage is included, spanning a total of 3 scenes. The first one being from episode 2, Gregory's Beard. It features Dobby and Jez talking while outside the wedding venue.
Dobbs, listen, I just wanted to get you alone so I could drop a bit of a truth bomb on your head.
We get to hear a side of the return of Dobby that didn't get brought up at all in the final episode, that being that Jeremy still apparently loves her. Yes, it's time for more of this idea, straight from the end of Series 8.
I love you. I am in love with you.
Jez is confused, and that definitely comes across in his dialogue.
And I think I might like/love this guy and/or his girlfriend.
He might have feelings for Joe, but Mark is really brilliant and still loves Dobby, but Jez thinks he might like or love Joe and or Megan, but he also loves Dobby. He then attempts to delete that this conversation ever happened.
Delete.
Yeah.
Delete.
This is an odd scene. It doesn't seem to really fit with how the rest of the episode plays out, outside of possibly this specific moment during Jeremy's speech.
If someone loves someone, he just loves them.
The Jez still loving Dobby idea really isn't touched on throughout the rest of the episode. We never hear any internal thoughts of him thinking about her, nor do I really see why exactly Jez is seemingly trying to get her back with Mark.
I wanted to talk to you about Mark and how brilliant he is.
Yeah, Jez.
I guess if he loved her being with Mark would mean he'd get to see more of her, but nah, I really don't like this. I don't find it particularly funny either.
You douchebag.
With this manic kind of speaking, as though Jez's stream of consciousness is just coming out, in a way this moment feels like his best man speech, but just not as good. Dobby getting annoyed at the end doesn't really seem to play into the other scenes either. It also seems somewhat out of character for her, given how relaxed and open to fun she is in the rest of the episode. I think the scene was probably an attempt to tie up the ending of Quantocking 2, seeing as it hasn't really happened yet, and this is Dobby's final episode in the show, of course, but I don't think a single scene was really enough to do that. I've mentioned before that one of the reasons I consider Gregory's Beard to be my least favourite episode is that Dobby doesn't even really get an exit. The last time we see her is just an unassuming scene that you have no idea is her last until you realise that she's gone in the next episode. But with this deleted scene of Dobby really not entertaining Jeremy's antics, it feels like they may have at one point had Dobby leave because she got pissed off at Jez and possibly Mark too.
If you fall in love with a couple more people, Jez, we could have enough for a rounders team.
Okay.
I think this scene could have worked in that scenario if we saw her get increasingly weirded out by the pair as the episode progressed, to the point that she just leaves for good. But with just a single out of context and out of place feeling scene, I don't think this moment comes across too well.
Consider this part of the conversation erased.
The final 2 deleted scenes are both from episode 5, Kid Farm. The first being when Mark and Jez initially arrive at the Kid Cave. Yes, this location is the Kid Cave and the episode is the Kid Farm. It's a brief yet funny moment as Jez plays up with the woman on the desk.
I bet you get this a lot, don't you? Sad handovers in the weeping barn.
Though this is the kind of scene that is quite obvious to see why it was cut. In the grand scheme of the episode, it doesn't really add anything at all. The same can't be said for the next scene though, which I think is one that they definitely made a mistake cutting out. It's from when Mark and Jez are leaving the Kid Cave this time. In the full episode, we cut from being inside watching the waking of the Bull Pit Witch to Mark and Jez hastily walking down the road. Plus there's a POV shot from a mysterious unseen person in a car. Well, the deleted scene actually explains what's going on here. Ian Chapman, Sophie's dad, shows up to pick Sophie and baby Ian up.
Real men don't bury their wives alive.
I love that line. It's just so fitting with everything we've seen and heard of Ian in the past. He's such a brilliant and underutilized character in my opinion, and his last appearance before this was in Series 7's Nether Zone, so we really haven't seen a lot of him around this time in the show. We end Peep Show with characters like Megan, a Series 9 debutante, having the same amount of episodes and much more screen time than Ian, and the fact that what presumably would have been his sole scene in Series 9 is a short yet funny one, and one that let the viewer know who is staring at Mark and Jez leaving, and it was still cut, is a huge shame in my opinion. The entire thing is only 22 seconds long too. Yeah, I think it was definitely unfortunate that this didn't make it into the final cut of the episode.
She might be a minute. She needs quite a lot of coffee.
9 minutes and 36 seconds of bloopers are included here. Though I normally say there's no point discussing them, I do want to point out how much I like that Patterson Joseph seems to stay in character as Johnson even after he messes his lines up.
Mark, I thought it was a high-class whore, but it wasn't.
So that's the end of the Peep Show DVD bonus features for Series 9, but wait, there's still one final Series 9 related piece of Peep Show media to cover.
Watch the YouTube.
As a piece of promotional material for the then upcoming Series 9, Channel 4 uploaded a video in which they asked David Mitchell, Robert Webb and Matt King a few questions about Peep Show and then play various clips from previous episodes.
I get offered a lot of drugs. I'll be honest, I do get offered a lot of drugs.
For whatever reason, this video was actually made unlisted on YouTube at some point, despite older Peep Show content, like the various cast interviews and behind the scenes from Series 6, still being fully available. I'll put a link to it in the description or the comments or something so you can watch it if you want, but yeah, it is strange that this was made unlisted for some reason.
Frankfurt.
There were a few online things done for the promotion of Series 9 actually. There was even a competition held where you could win the genuine sofa used in the flat, the Creamy Elephant. I actually entered this contest all those years back, but unfortunately didn't win. Imagine if once this video series was done, the camera zoomed out and I was recording this audio while sitting on that sofa. That would have been great, but right, of course, the video.
They found some more web space then.
Yeah.
There's a few behind the scenes moments shown in the intro part, including one with David getting his hair done that reminds me of the Mitchell and Webb sketch where he wears a wig over a bald cap over a wig. There's also briefly a clip of Jez shown on a monitor, and if you're wondering, which obviously you aren't, this is from the filming of episode 5, Kid Farm.
It's very important that he doesn't realise that I'm a loser.
In the questions, David and Rob were asked where they think their characters will be in 10 years, to which David says he hopes that if we're ever to see more of Peep Show in the future, that Mark and Jez will still be as unhappy as they are now. So I suppose that's it. That's Series 9 finished, and seeing as how Series 10 of Peep Show isn't a thing, at least at the time that this video was made, there's no more additional content to talk about. Thanks for watching along.
Goodbye!
Congratulations, you've reached the end of the video. That took a while, didn't it? Or maybe you just skipped right to the end. Just going back over this stuff, it's quite crazy just how much there was to talk about. DVD features, menus and cases, a book, online videos, documentaries, bonus shorts. I'm really appreciative of the fact that so much more Peep Show exists outside of simply the episodes. Hours and hours of material that, unfortunately, a lot of people will probably never get to watch. I think it's a great feeling when you find a new show you like, finish it, and then realise there's still plenty more things still waiting for you. I just want to say another thank you to those that have stuck around for this entire series. If you've not watched any of the videos individually and have just seen this compilation, you may not be aware, but these videos were actually made and released over the course of about 8 months, so it's nice to finally be done with it. If there's any more additional Peep Show material in the future, I'll be sure to talk about it, but for now, I suppose, that's that.